Chapter 1241. Because Hua Xiaoheng had forced her to sign the marriage certificate, Gu Nianji didn't acknowledge the marriage contract. She had fantasized countless times that if Hua Xiaoheng proposed to her again, she would definitely not let him off easy. How could she agree to marry him so quickly? She had to reject him at least 3 times. In the end, she didn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to choose such a solemn, sacred and beautiful place to propose to her. The dark red tomb of the unknown warrior stood quietly, surrounded by towering red walls and shady trees. On the green grass, a little squirrel ran over with a pine cone in its arms. It stood on the lawn and looked at them curiously. There were originally soldiers standing guard in the glass sentry booths on both sides of the tomb. But at this time, the soldiers seemed to have just finished their shift and gone for lunch. There was no one else except the 2 of them. Only the blue sky, white clouds, sunlight, green trees, and a little squirrel accompanied them. Gu Nianji couldn't reject Hua Xiaoheng like this, nor could she reject his deep love. He loved her and finally just like how she loved him. They had become each other's faith and dependence. Gu Nianji subconsciously said, "I do." After saying it, she didn't regret it. Hua Xiaoheng looked up at his beloved girl, and the corners of his eyes were slightly moist. He knew that he had let her down. Most of the time he couldn't stay by her side like an ordinary man. Marrying a soldier, and a soldier on a special front at that, she would have to bear a greater price than an ordinary soldier's wife. Fortunately, she had grown up with him. She understood everything about him and understood the price she would have to bear. Moreover, she was also someone who had the ability to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. She wasn't a daughter waiting for him to pity her. Gu Nianji didn't hesitate at all. The "I do" that she blurted out was the truest reflection of her heart. Gu Nianji also looked at Hua Xiaoheng. She looked at the rare deep affection in his deep and dark eyes. She looked at his tall and straight nose, which even cast a shadow on one side under the sunlight. She looked at his firm and exquisite jaw, which was perfectly curved. She looked at his seductive lips that were suitable for kissing. Hua Xiaoheng opened the lid of the ring box in his hand. It was as if a bright moon had suddenly appeared under the setting sun. Even the dazzling sunlight could not take away the silver brilliance of the moon. In the ring box made of good quality mahogany, a diamond ring lay quietly. The diamond was large and eye-catching, and its entire body was clear and transparent. Under the sunlight, the light it refracted was dazzling but not dazzling. The light inside was soft like the mist under the moonlight, especially enchanting. Gu Nianji was fascinated. How could there be such a beautiful diamond? Although it looked expensive, it was not ostentatious at all. "This is Van Cleef & Arpels' classic borderless inlay technique." Gu Nianji's eyes flashed. Like Ma Qiqi, she had also carefully studied the craftsmanship of inlaying diamond rings. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and took out the diamond ring from the ring box to put it on Gu Nianji's left ring finger. The size of the ring was just right. It was worn on Gu Nianji's smooth, straight and boneless finger. As the saying went, a little loose would be too loose and a little tight would be too tight. The way it was now was just right. However, the diamond was really too big. It was a little out of place on her hand. It was really the size of a quail egg. In the past, people said that a diamond ring was the size of a pigeon egg, but it was actually an exaggeration, or it was a visual effect formed by many small diamonds gathered together. However, Gu Nianji's diamond ring only had a diamond monolith without any impurities. It was the size of a quail egg. It was literally a quail egg. Hua Xiaoheng stood up and caressed Gu Nianji's fingers. He chuckled softly and said, "This diamond was left to me by my grandmother when she passed away. She said she wanted to see this diamond set on a ring and give it to my fiancé." Gu Nianji was a little embarrassed. She blushed slightly and said, "Since it was left by your grandmother, let's put it in the safe as a souvenir. Isn't it too ostentatious to make it into a ring?" It was so big that she was embarrassed to wear it out. "The engagement ring is like this. When we have our wedding in the future, I'll give you a wedding ring that you can wear every day." Hua Xiaoheng comforted her in a low voice. "This diamond belongs to you. I've already written to the International Diamond Association and requested that this diamond be renamed Sirius Gu. From now on it's yours." Gu Nianji was surprised. It still needs to be renamed? Could it be that this diamond used to have a name? Looking at Gu Nianji's eyes that were filled with curiosity, Hua Xiaoheng thought about it and told her the truth. This diamond was originally called the Grand Duke Joseph's diamond. It weighs 76 carats. Gu Nianji is the largest and most perfect diamond in the world. Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips. When my grandmother bought it at an auction back then, it was said that she spent tens of millions of dollars. Of course it's more than that price now. Gu Nianji suddenly felt her hands weigh 1,000 pounds. Before my grandmother, the last owner of this diamond was Grand Duke Joseph's wife, Princess Mary. And Princess Mary is the granddaughter of the Princess Chanchan you're familiar with. I think only such a diamond ring is worthy of you, Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. He held Gu Nianji's shoulder and looked at her slightly open lips. He wanted to lean down and kiss her. At that moment, a young child's voice rang out not far from them. Now you may kiss the bride, said the little boy, smiling. He spoke Russian. Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng turned around to see a fair-skinned, blonde, blue-eyed little boy standing on the lawn with a smile and clapping his hands at them. Hua Xiaoheng had wanted to kiss Gu Nianji, but he couldn't bring himself to kiss her when he saw a 5-year-old boy watching from the side. He couldn't let a child see this kind of inappropriate scene. What did he say? Gu Nianji asked curiously. She didn't understand Russian. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and whispered in her ear. He said, Now you, may kiss the bride. Gu Nianji blushed and smiled. Kids these days are so mischievous. Who are you? Why are you here alone? Gu Nianji thought the little boy was too cute, so she couldn't help walking over and bending down to talk to him. The little boy grinned and said, I came with mommy to offer flowers to the tomb of the unknown warrior. With that he turned around and shouted, Mommy! Mommy! Gu Nianji asked in English, What are you saying? Do you speak English? The little boy tilted his head and looked at her. He didn't understand what she was saying. Gu Nianji could only turn to look at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and translated for her. He said he and his mommy came to offer flowers and is calling his mommy. But after waiting for a while, his mommy didn't appear. Gu Nianji was about to ask where his mommy was when a white couple wearing black-rimmed glasses appeared. Both of them looked and behaved very much like British people. They were stiff and they tried their best to maintain their arrogance. Even the way they walked was elegant and pretentious. The middle-aged woman walked towards Gu Nianji and said rudely in Russian, Please stay away from my son. As she spoke, she picked up the little boy and turned to leave. The little boy froze for a moment, then panicked. He said a few words in Russian in Gu Nianji's direction. His eyes were filled with panic and his entire body was trembling. Gu Nianji didn't know what the woman and the little boy were talking about, but her intuition told her that something was wrong. She immediately said sternly, Stop. Put the child down. Hua Xiaoheng also caught up and said, The child is calling for help. I'm afraid those two people aren't his parents. There were actually human traffickers here. Gu Nianji was filled with righteous indignation. Without hesitation, she rushed forward and held the middle-aged woman who was holding the child from behind. The man next to the middle-aged woman also became anxious. He suddenly took out a gun and aimed it at Gu Nianji's head. Get lost. If you continue to be a busybody, I'll shoot. After all, they were in Alexander's garden where there were guards standing guard. Not far away was the tomb of the unknown warrior, and behind the red wall was the Kremlin. Unless it was absolutely necessary, this person wouldn't dare to shoot. But if he dared to point a gun at Gu Nianji's head in front of Hua Xiaoheng, this person's luck had run out. Before Gu Nianji could react, Hua Xiaoheng had already arrived from behind. He threw a heavy punch at the man, causing him to jerk his head and spit out several teeth from his mouth. Hua Xiaoheng's strength was fierce and the angle was tricky. He had actually knocked out all the teeth in the man's mouth with one punch. Many people who had experienced it knew how painful it was to have a toothache. Not many people had experienced how painful it was to have a tooth extracted without anesthesia. Almost all of the man's teeth had been knocked out by Hua Xiaoheng's punch. He didn't even make a sound before he fainted from the pain. However, before he could fall to the ground, a few gunshots suddenly came from the grove next to him. All of them accurately hit the man's body. By the time he fell to the ground, he was already dead. A group of people emerged from the grove. They all looked smart and capable. Each of them held a gun in their hands and aimed it at the middle-aged woman holding the child. Of course, they also aimed it at Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji turned around and saw that the middle-aged KGB driver who had sent them over and the second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, were among them. She raised an eyebrow and instantly understood that the child in the middle-aged woman's arms probably had an extraordinary identity. However, she didn't want to save this child because of his extraordinary identity. Even if he was a child from an ordinary family, she couldn't bear to see him kidnapped by human traffickers. Since she had encountered him, it was the human traffickers' bad luck. The middle-aged woman was furious. It was all this annoying couple's fault. If it weren't for them, she and her partner would have taken the child away long ago. With a flip of her wrist, she also took out a gun. Hua Xiaoheng reached out like lightning and grabbed the woman's wrist that was holding the gun. He twisted it and the woman screamed. The gun in her hand fell to the ground with a thud, and her hand hung down at a strange angle. Hua Xiaoheng had casually broken it. Gu Nianji quickly snatched the child from her arms and kicked her. The middle-aged woman was kicked to the ground by her. As soon as she landed, she heard the sound of gunshots with silencers. It sounded like beans being fried, and she was instantly shot to death by the group of KGB agents. Gu Nianji quickly covered the little boy's eyes with her hands. The little boy's entire body was trembling. He gripped Gu Nianji's shoulder tightly and buried his head in her neck. He was so scared that he couldn't even cry. "Dimi? My Dimi? Where are you?" A woman's heart-wrenching cry was heard, as well as the sound of desperate running and panting. Soon she arrived in front of them. Gu Nianji focused her gaze and saw that it was the leopard print girl she was familiar with. She had seen her once in the Kremlin yesterday, and she had also seen her once today in the restaurant that was decorated like a palace. She hadn't expected it to be her son? Then wasn't this child the legendary? Gu Nianji quickly glanced at the little boy. The little boy heard his mommy's voice and finally turned around to shout, "Mommy!" He sobbed and said something. Gu Nianji handed the child to her, and the mother and son immediately hugged their heads and cried. "Thank you, Mississippi. Thank you for saving my Dimi." The leopard print girl finally wiped her tears and looked up to thank Gu Nianji. This was the second watch of the day, Chapter 1231, The Diamond Ring Named Sirius. 8 p.m. the third watch. P.S. Today is Monday. Don't forget your recommendation votes. And monthly votes. Moi. Chapter 1242. Gu Nianji didn't understand Russian, but she could roughly guess that he was thanking her. Hua Xiaoheng was still translating for her. He put one arm around her shoulder and said gently, "This lady is thanking you for saving her child, little Dimi." Gu Nianji smiled and said, "It's good that the child is fine. Don't leave the child alone in the future. Many people covet such a cute child." After Hua Xiaoheng translated for her, the leopard print lady also smiled. She hugged her son and kissed him. "My little Dimi is so cute." Every mother would be happy to hear someone praise their child for being cute. The relationship between the two of them was instantly brought closer. The little boy, Dimi, leaned against his mother's arms. He felt safe and was no longer afraid. He began to ramble about what had just happened. "They're getting married. The groom is kissing the bride. Someone kidnapped me. The bride saved Dimi and the groom beat up the bad guys. He's as powerful as Dimi's daddy." In little Dimi's eyes, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were the bride and groom. The KGB members had been suspicious about why Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were here at this time. Now that they heard little Dimi's words, they all looked at Gu Nianji's left middle finger. It was indeed a big diamond ring. The KGB driver immediately covered his eyes and screamed in English, my eyes. Blinding my dog eyes." The leopard print lady also saw the ring, and a flash of envy flashed through her eyes. She knew that wearing a ring on the middle finger was probably a proposal. It seemed that the couple had just proposed in front of the tomb of the unknown warrior, so they had coincidentally bumped into each other. She turned around and said to the people behind her, "Bring me my flowers." A fat woman panted as she walked over with a large bouquet of flowers in her arms. The leopard print lady picked out a bright red rose and handed it to Gu Nianji. "Thank you for saving my son. This rose is for you. I wish you a successful engagement." Gu Nianji took the flowers and smiled prettier than the flowers. "Thank you." She watched as a group of people surrounded the leopard print lady and the little boy, Dimi, as they walked towards the tomb of the unknown warrior. It seemed like she really did bring the child to present the flowers, but for some reason, the little boy ran over first and was targeted by someone, which led to today's incident. The two men and women who had been beaten to death were immediately carried away and cleaned up. Someone came over with a shovel and a bucket to clean the floor. Hua Xiaoheng said, "Let's go." Gu Nianji nodded and left with him. As soon as they turned the corner, Gu Nianji's phone rang. She picked it up and looked at it. It was an unfamiliar Russian number. She thought for a moment, then answered the call and said in English, "Hello." The person on the other end paused for a moment and said in English, "Thank you for saving Dimi." Then he said, "I heard that you guys are getting engaged today. I'll give you a big gift tomorrow." Gu Nianji, who is this? How arrogant. The other side of the phone quickly hung up. Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng and said in confusion, "Someone thanked me for saving that little boy." She added, "It was a man. Actually, it was the two of them who had saved him, but these people only thanked her and not Hua Xiaoheng." Gu Nianji was a little unhappy. She sullenly held Hua Xiaoheng's hand. You obviously did the most. If it was just me, that child wouldn't have been saved today. What did she mean by deliberately ignoring Hua Xiaoheng's efforts? Gu Nianji felt indignant for Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng's heart warmed and he kissed her on the cheek. It's fine as long as my wife remembers. Who cares about others? Gu Nianji wanted to appear calm and aloof, but she couldn't suppress the smile on her lips no matter how hard she tried. The two of them walked a few more steps before the second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, and the middle-aged KGB driver caught up to them. Serious? Serious? Gu Nianji turned around and saw them. She asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Is there anything else?" Vladimir stopped and panted slightly. It's like this. You did us a big favor today. He gestured with his hand to show that the favor was really big. Gu Nianji was amused by him and said, "It was just a piece of cake. No matter who this child is, I won't just sit by and do nothing. I hate human traffickers the most." Gu Nianji raised her fist to express her hatred. Human traffickers. Vladimir was dumbfounded, but he quickly came back to his senses and said with a smile, "Human traffickers. Human traffickers." The middle-aged KGB driver snickered at the side. He thought about how the two elite British MI5 agents who had tried to kidnap little Demi were actually accused of being human traffickers. If they were still alive at this moment, they would probably be cursing in their hearts. However, he really liked Gu Nianji like this. The middle-aged KGB driver was excited and said before Vladimir could, "Oh my, serious, you're so good at catching human traffickers. You've done so much and today is your engagement day. We plan to give you a gift. Tell us, what gift do you want? As long as we can do it, we'll definitely fulfill your wish." Vladimir glared at the middle-aged driver. Stealing the show. Drama queen. Those were clearly his lines. Vladimir pushed the middle-aged driver away and nodded. "Yes, what gift do you want? What wish do you have? As long as you mention it, we'll definitely think of a way to do it for you." After saying that, he winked and emphasized, "Really, you know us. There's no wish in this world that we can't fulfill." His promise had the backing of the entire KGB or perhaps the entire Russia. Gu Nianji wanted to laugh. She understood who was thanking her. However, they should be thanking Hua Xiaoheng the most, not her. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "Really? You're not bragging, are you? Can you really fulfill any wish?" "Of course. You're so nice, so you definitely won't make any unreasonable requests." Vladimir smiled from ear to ear. "Do you think we'll make promises to just anyone?" Gu Nianji smiled even more innocently. "Really? I do have a wish and only you can fulfill it. Say it. Just say it. If you can't do it, then we lose." The middle-aged KGB driver rolled up his sleeves and was ready to go all out. Gu Nianji glanced at Hua Xiaoheng and said with a smile, "I especially like your Tu-160 White Swan bomber. My wish is that my fiancé can drive a Tu-160 and take me for a spin in the sky. Is that possible?" Actually, the person who really liked this bomber was Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat. If he had the chance to fly the Tu-160 himself, his soul as a fighter pilot would die without regrets. That's what you want?" Vladimir and the middle-aged driver were both surprised. They had thought that the little girl would want a designer bag or even a high-end apartment in Moscow. They had already prepared everything. They hadn't expected that she would want her fiancé to fly the Tu-160 with her. It seemed to be within their expectations but also unexpected at the same time. The two of them looked at each other, then took out their phones together. After dialing a special number, they immediately began to report. Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng quietly stood to the side, leaning against each other. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her and asked with his eyes, "Why?" Gu Nianji smiled and raised the big diamond ring on her hand. She mouthed silently. Courtesy demands reciprocity. He had given her a unique big diamond ring and she had also given him his most desired wish. Not long after, Vladimir was the first to hang up the phone. He said with a smile, "Okay, we agree. We can let you fly the most advanced Tu-160M2. That's an upgraded version of the Tu-160. In fact, it was just an upgraded navigation map and engine from the old Tu-160 with the best performance. It wasn't considered a brand new plane. They couldn't build a brand new Tu-160 at the moment." Hua Xiaoheng's heart was pounding, but he still maintained his composure on the surface. However, his voice was a little unsteady. He said politely, "I hope it won't be too much trouble for you." "Of course not. Just treat it as a test flight for us." The KGB driver said quickly. "Will you die if you don't speak?" Vladimir roared at him. The two of them quarreled the entire way. They took Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng into the car and headed to the secret airport of the military base. On the tarmac in the distance, beautiful White Swan strategic nuclear bombers were lined up in a neat formation, ready to take off at any moment. It was as if they could fly into the sky at any moment. Gu Nianji was amazed. "The Russians have really perfected the aesthetics of violence," she muttered. She got out of Vladimir's jeep and was stunned. Of course. The middle-aged driver poked his head out of the jeep and whistled. "It's beautiful, isn't it? When it drops the bomb, boom. It's so beautiful that it has no friends." Gu Nianji, Vladimir smiled and winked at Hua Xiaoheng. "Your fiancée is so amazing. She helped you fulfill your wish. This is her engagement gift to you, right?" Hua Xiaoheng. This was the third update of the day, Chapter 1232, Reciprocity. P.S. Today is Monday, don't forget your recommendation votes. And monthly votes. Mwah. Chapter 1243. Looking at Hua Xiaoheng's expressionless face, the second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, laughed even more happily. He patted Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder. "Let's go change over there." In addition to changing into a full set of pilot clothes and equipment, of course, it was inevitable to go through a full-body metal detector inspection, which was even more stringent than the security check before boarding the plane. These people knew exactly what Hua Xiaoheng did, so even though they had agreed to Gu Nianji's conditions, they still had to be careful. It wasn't a problem for him to personally fly the Tu-160 in the sky, but he absolutely couldn't bring any secretly recording equipment on the plane. After all, these Huaxia people were one of the best on the entire Blue Planet in terms of reverse psychology. After Gu Nianji came out of the metal inspection door, she also changed into a female pilot's uniform. It was a very handsome pilot's jacket, a helmet that looked like an astronaut's helmet, and a pair of special aviator sunglasses. Her face was small to begin with, and with the pilot's helmet on, it was only the size of a palm. The KGB driver saw her coming out and couldn't help reaching out his palm to gesture in front of her face. It really wasn't as big as his palm. When Vladimir saw this, he angrily slapped his palm away and said, "Your palm is like a bear's paw. Of course it's bigger than our serious face. What are you blindly gesturing for?" The driver? His pride was hurt. He angrily climbed into the cabin of the Tu-160. Hua Xiaoheng followed him onto the plane. Vladimir turned around with a smile and pulled Gu Nianji. "Serious, come. You go first. I'll go last." Gu Nianji nodded and smiled. "Thank you." Her voice was soft and innocent, especially when she was talking to someone she was familiar with. It did not feel pretentious, but it made people unable to get angry at her. It was like a natural fire extinguishing system. Vladimir looked at her and smiled almost kindly. Where did these people come from? His methods were even more ruthless than those of the special forces. He didn't even bat an eyelid when he killed the 2 elite agents from Britain's MI5. However, he was becoming more and more soft-hearted towards Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji climbed into the cabin ahead of him. This was her first time seeing the world inside such a large nuclear strategic bomber. It was much more spacious than the fighter jets she had seen before. Normal fighter jets could only seat one person, while slightly larger ones could seat two. However, this Tu-160 could seat 4 people. The 2 seats at the front of the cockpit were for the pilot and co-pilot respectively, while the 2 seats at the back were for the 2 navigators who also cooperated with the combat personnel. Navigation was mainly responsible for the operation of offensive weapons, such as launching various cruise missiles and dropping nuclear bombs when necessary. The second part of navigation was mainly responsible for electronic warfare, high-altitude communications, or interfering with the enemy's radar and electronic systems. The 4 of them each had their own Red Star K-36L7000 ejection seat, which could be ejected from the escape hatch. Hua Xiaoheng and Vladimir sat in the front 2 seats. Hua Xiaoheng was the pilot, and Vladimir was the co-pilot. Gu Nianji sat directly behind Hua Xiaoheng, which was usually the seat for navigation. Therefore, many of the control panels in front of her were cruise missile control systems. The middle-aged driver sat next to Gu Nianji in the second seat of navigation. The control panel in front of him was responsible for electronic warfare and high-altitude communication systems. However, this was only a test flight. The control panel in front of Gu Nianji and the middle-aged driver was completely useless. Only the pilot's seat in front of them was functional. After Vladimir sat down in the cockpit, the hatch slowly closed. Gu Nianji quickly felt her breathing quicken. She didn't have enough oxygen. She imitated the other 3 people in the cockpit. She put on an oxygen mask and fastened her seatbelt. Hua Xiaoheng first looked at the control panel in front of him, then skillfully placed his right hand on the central control lever. Vladimir, who had wanted to explain in English, silently rubbed his nose and narrowed his eyes. Major General Hua, you're familiar with all of this, right? I won't explain. Thinking about it made him feel complicated. The control panel was fully marked in Russian, but the Major General of the Wuxia Empire actually had no cognitive barriers in front of him. Not only were his movements so standard that they could be taught in textbooks, but he was also skilled and natural. It was as if he had worked under such conditions countless times. He must be drooling over their family's white swan. Vladimir was both proud and sad. It was such a good plane, but it was a pity that they couldn't build it themselves. Vladimir pursed his lips, and from the corner of his eye he quickly sized up Gunyenji, who was sitting directly behind Hua Xiaoheng and diagonally behind him. He saw that she was tilting her body and watching Hua Xiaoheng's every move with sparkling eyes. She had the look of a fangirl. This girl's heart was too honest. Vladimir's impression of Gunyenji suddenly went through the roof. Not only was she not picky or disdainful of the men who worked in their industry, but she was also virtuous and considerate. She could also use her own strength to help them realize their dreams. Were there more girls like her? If there were, give him a dozen. Just as Vladimir was letting his imagination run wild, Hua Xiaoheng had already familiarized himself with all the operating procedures and began to communicate with the ground control panel. Road clear. Wind clear. Hua Xiaoheng's steady and deep voice echoed in the cockpit as he carried out the pre-takeoff checks one by one. On the runway in front, several ground crew members in bright yellow uniforms gestured, "Let's go." Hua Xiaoheng simply raised his hand and pushed the control lever forward with his right hand. Boom. Two balls of raging flames shot out from the engine. The swan-like Tu-160 quickly started up and instantly sped up on the runway at a high speed. Gunyenji only felt the seat belt suddenly tighten around her chest, and she couldn't breathe from the acceleration. The speed was too fast. It took less than 3 minutes to go from 0 to the speed of sound. Gunyenji began to feel dizzy. At that moment, the KGB driver next to her suddenly waved his arms excitedly and almost danced in the cockpit. Yo, ho, iya, woo. Shut up. Vladimir turned around and scolded him fiercely. If you keep yelling, I'll eject you right now. I mean what I say. The middle-aged driver quickly covered his mouth with his mask and stopped yelling. However, his pair of agile eyes darted left and right, and finally stared at Gunyenji. Turning on the communication channel between the two of them, the middle-aged driver whispered to her through the headset, "Serious, are you airsick?" Gunyenji, her entire face was buried in her helmet and mask. How could the middle-aged driver tell that she was airsick? However, at this time, Gunyenji wouldn't tell the truth even if she were to faint. She said calmly, "No, I'm observing the weather." As she spoke, she shifted her gaze out the window. The middle-aged driver, Hua Xiaoheng, who was in the front seat, was immersed in the nervous driving. His arms gradually exerted force as he pushed the joystick forward step by step and pulled it up. Finally, the white swan rose into the air along with the airflow and quickly soared into the clouds. The largest long-range bomber, the most powerful horsepower, the best cruise missile system, the most flexible fuselage, and the smoothest operating system. It wasn't completely controlled by an electronic system, but a semi-mechanized console. The pilot could exert more subjective initiative. This was a real aircraft, not operating the aircraft on a display screen like playing a video game. Unfortunately, most aircraft nowadays were already fully automatic flight systems. The pilot piloted the aircraft almost exactly like a video game. In fact, many flight schools expressed the flight simulation system in the form of a video game. A game expert was also very likely to become a flying expert. However, the upper limit of such an expert was there, and that was the upper limit of the automatic system. And the upper limit of a semi-mechanized operating system was limitless. The more talented the pilot was, the more he could perform with the aircraft in his hands. Of course, when most people's talent was very mediocre, the automatic system could raise the pilot's operating ability to a higher level. However, when faced with a real human genius, the automatic system would still be greatly inferior. At this moment, Hua Xiaoheng displayed the blueprint of a flying genius soaring freely in the blue sky. Every time he turned around, every time he completed a technique, it was the realization of countless flying instructors' dreams. A vertical 90-degree pull, a dive, and a 360-degree turn, the beautiful Tu-160 was like a white swan that had woken up from a deep sleep and was dancing in the blue sky. The entire secret Air Force base was stunned by Hua Xiaoheng's piloting skills. Countless cameras and cell phones were aimed at the small white dot in the sky, sometimes near and sometimes far. Oh my god. Oh my god. Lifetime series. There's actually this kind of operation. He really has never flown at 2160 before. This is the first time? The first time? *CK. I'm kneeling. If you want to fight with their country in the future, don't call me. I refuse to be his enemy. A series of exclamations came from the mouths of the ace pilots, and the meaning was even more extraordinary. Wu Xiaoheng had no idea what kind of exclamations and attention he had attracted. He was only fully immersed in flying, immersed in piloting the White Swan long-range nuclear strategic bomber. Because he might never have a second chance. Gu Nianji tilted her body and stared in Wu Xiaoheng's direction. In the eyes of Vladimir and the driver, Gu Nianji was staring at her fiancé lovingly. In fact, her attention was completely focused on the scrolling data displayed on the dashboard in front of Wu Xiaoheng. Lines of numbers flashed past her eyes. She stared at them with rapt attention. Gu Nianji didn't understand Russian, but she could still recognize Arabic numerals. There were so many parameters displayed, and she used her amazing photographic memory to memorize them one by one. She had carefully looked at every corner of the cockpit and then saved it in her camera-like brain. This was a secret weapon that the metal detection door couldn't detect no matter what. This was the first watch of the day, Chapter 1233, Secret Weapon. The second watch at 1 p.m., the third watch at 8 p.m. P.S. Thank you to Shi Irma for the 20,000 Chidian coins yesterday and the day before. Thank you to Momo Moshi for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to Beth 1211 for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1244. The white swan whistled across the blue sky. It was as fast as lightning and it almost left afterimages in people's retinas. When it slowly landed at the secret airport of the military base, countless ground crew and pilots swarmed over. They lifted Wu Xiaoheng up and threw him into the air again and again. Hurrah! Hurrah! Cheers rang through the sky. At this moment, everyone temporarily forgot the boundaries of the country. Everyone was only expressing their reverence for the hero and their joy and worship of the ultimate human ability. Gu Nianji stood between the two KGB officers with a proud expression on her face. She sighed with pride and said, "This is my Major General Hua. He's awesome." The two KGB officers looked at each other and treated Gu Nianji even more kindly. "Serious, you're so happy today. Let's go have a drink together?" Gu Nianji touched her face and shook her head regretfully. "I'm still dizzy. I almost vomited just now. I want to go back and rest. We'll go play tomorrow, okay?" Then she added, "I can't drink yet. I'm not 22 years old yet." "What?" The middle-aged driver jumped up. "You're not 22 years old yet? Didn't you graduate from graduate school?" "Gu Nianji. To be precise, I'm not 20 years old yet." The middle-aged driver's mouth twitched, then he pounded his chest and howled like Tarzan. "I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore. You're only half my age, but your position is twice as high as mine." Vladimir sneered from the side. "Only half your age? Do you know how to count? Are you really only 40 years old? Don't you have any shame?" The middle-aged driver's howl stopped abruptly, as if someone had clamped his throat. He coughed uncomfortably and tried his best to be serious. "All right, it's impolite to talk about age in front of a lady. Vladimir, let's not talk about such a depressing topic anymore." He was the one who brought it up first, but now he was blaming Vladimir. Vladimir was so angry that he couldn't speak. Gu Nianji stood at the side with a smile and tried to persuade Vladimir first. "I don't mind. It's okay. Just say it." Then she asked the middle-aged driver. "Then how old are you?" Little girls under 20 years old didn't mind talking about age. The ones who minded were mature women over 30 years old. Men, when it came to talking about age, were at least over 40 years old. The middle-aged driver's eyes darted around and he didn't answer her question. He muttered a few words before saying, "I'll drive the car over and take you back to the hotel." With that, he ran away. Vladimir was very satisfied with Gu Nianji. He lowered his head and took out his phone. He posted a post on his WeChat Moments, then pushed Gu Nianji's arm. "Go and like it." Gu Nianji quickly took out her phone and saw a little red dot on her WeChat Moments. She clicked on it and saw that there was a new WeChat Moments message under the name Vladimir KGB2, that she had marked for Vladimir. Vladimir KGB number 2. "Today I sat in the most thrilling 2160 in history, and I also met the cutest little fairy, Sirius." Like JPG. The accompanying photo was of Gu Nianji in the cockpit looking in Wu Xiaoheng's direction. However, in the photo the dashboard in front of Hua Xiaoheng had been completely blurred out. Only Gu Nianji's beautiful side profile could be clearly seen. From the angle of Vladimir's photo, Gu Nianji's expression was focused, and her gaze was almost glued to Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and smiled. This photo was good. Although the dashboard had been blurred out, Vladimir definitely didn't know that Gu Nianji was also a computer expert. If she couldn't do it, there was still Hua Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi. With the three of them, it wouldn't be a problem to restore the blurred background. Gu Nianji clicked on the photo and happily chose to save it to her phone. Then she liked it below and commented, "Uncle Vladimir, you flatter me. Thank you for your gift. I like it very much." Vladimir immediately replied, "Vladimir KGB number 2. When are you getting married? You must invite me to the wedding when the time comes." Gu Nianji glanced at Vladimir, who was beside her, and felt a little speechless. After a while, the middle-aged driver drove the jeep to their side, honked the horn and said, "What are you doing? Get in the car." Vladimir didn't even look up and said, "I'm replying to Sirius's WeChat moments. Don't make any noise." "Is there something wrong with you?" The middle-aged driver honked the horn wildly. "Sirius is standing right next to you. Instead of talking to her, you're chatting with her on WeChat." Vladimir flew into a rage out of humiliation. He stuffed his phone back into his pocket and glared at the middle-aged driver. "Just you wait. I'm going to send you to Siberia to dig up black soil. You're abusing your position to get even with me." The middle-aged driver was also angry. He was always being rebuked. Even a clay bodhisattva had a temper. "How am I abusing my position to get even with you? You're being disrespectful to your superior." Vladimir knocked on the car window. "Is that how you talk to your superior? You're just jealous of me." The middle-aged driver pulled a long face. "You're jealous that I'm more likable than you. Who wasn't a baby?" Gu Nianji couldn't help it and burst out laughing. Vladimir? He really lost to him. It was such a waste to have such a shameless subordinate. Forget it, forget it. Vladimir saw that Hua Xiaoheng had come over, so he stopped arguing with the middle-aged driver. The few of them got into the car and sent Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji back to the hotel. Hua Xiaoheng was still in a state of excitement. His handsome face had an indescribable sense of vitality and dominance. Although he was still calm and collected, when he got into the car and saw Gu Nianji's smiling face, he couldn't help hugging her and kissing her. "Ah, my dog eyes are really going blind." The middle-aged driver saw it in the rearview mirror and turned around again to shout. This time Vladimir didn't scold him. He said, "I've been blind for a long time." Then he calmly took out a pair of sunglasses and put them on. Hua Xiaoheng's kiss was long and fierce, as if he wanted to vent all his excitement in this kiss. Gu Nianji's lips were numb from his kiss before she finally pushed him away. She wanted to scold him, but when she saw the starlight in Hua Xiaoheng's usually calm and deep eyes, she held back. She just rolled her eyes and glared at him. Hua Xiaoheng felt that his life was complete. The woman he loved the most had finally agreed to marry him and was no longer angry at him. She had even given him a gift that he would never forget. When he returned to the hotel entrance, Hua Xiaoheng wanted to express his gratitude to the 2 KGB uncles, but they waved their hands and left without saying anything. Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji was in a hurry to go back to her room to sort out her memories. "Major General Hua, my head doesn't feel well. I need to go back and sleep for a while." Gu Nianji blinked. Hua Xiaoheng came back to his senses and was a little worried. "Airsick? It's my fault. I got carried away today. I didn't expect you to not be used to the speed of a fighter jet." Gu Nianji rubbed her forehead with her hand. "It's okay. I'll go back and sleep for a while. I'll send you up and sleep with you." Hua Xiaoheng put his arm around her shoulder and walked to the elevator in the lobby. Gu Nianji quickly refused. "No need, no need. I'll sleep alone. Don't you have other work to do?" She hinted that she didn't need Hua Xiaoheng's company. Although Hua Xiaoheng was worried, he didn't insist when he saw that Gu Nianji was very determined. He only said, "Okay, I'll sit in your living room and deal with some emails. We'll order dinner when you wake up." Gu Nianji still refused. "There's really no need. We just got engaged today. It's not good for you to go to my room, right?" Her words reminded Hua Xiaoheng. "Alright, we're engaged. You can stay at my place." Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything else. He pulled Gu Nianji's arm into the elevator and arrived at the door of her room. "Pack your things and stay at my place." Hua Xiaoheng's room was larger and more luxurious, while Gu Nianji's room was a standard room. The two of them hadn't made it public before. It was similar to the relationship between a boss and a subordinate, so it wasn't appropriate for them to live together publicly. But now that they were engaged, who would dare to say anything? Hua Xiaoheng didn't care about these rumors to begin with. He was only worried about Gu Nianji's feelings, so he didn't force her to live with him. Now that they were engaged, he had the imperial sword. He would stab anyone who dared to mess around. Gu Nianji didn't expect that she would backfire. In a panic, she said, "There are secret cameras in your room and you still want me to stay there?" Hua Xiaoheng calmed down after Gu Nianji said this. He was so focused on being together with Gu Nianji that he had forgotten about the secret cameras and recording devices in his room. "Okay, then I'll stay in your room," Hua Xiaoheng said as he returned to his room to pack his things and check out of the luxurious suite. "Gu Nianji, go to sleep. Why are you still standing?" Hua Xiaoheng came to Gu Nianji's room and put his things away. He looked up and saw that Gu Nianji had no intention of sleeping. Gu Nianji sighed and said honestly, "I actually don't want to sleep." "Hua Xiaoheng, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Or are you feeling unwell?" Hua Xiaoheng was a little anxious, but it couldn't be seen on the surface. His expression was indifferent, and his voice was as low and pleasant as ever. Gu Nianji lowered her head and walked over. She reached out a finger and hooked the corner of Hua Xiaoheng's shirt. She whispered, "I recorded all the parameters of your flight just now. I want to write it down and give you a surprise." Now that Hua Xiaoheng wanted to stay with her, how could she give him a surprise? Hua Xiaoheng was stunned. Gradually, his chest was filled with waves of emotions called touched and ecstatic. He slowly pulled Gu Nianji's hand and placed it on his chest. He couldn't say a word and only let her feel his heart beating even more violently than usual. It was so powerful, so strong, as if it was going to jump out of his chest in the next moment. Gu Nianji felt it and looked up in surprise. She saw the undisguised love in his eyes as deep as the ocean. She wanted the ocean and he could finally give her the ocean. It was like a traveler who had traveled a long distance and finally saw the bright light at home, quietly emitting a warm light in the night sky. She should be smiling with satisfaction, but when she smiled, tears fell. "How old are you? You're still crying and smiling." Hua Xiaoheng shook his head with a smile and took out a tissue to wipe her tears. That night, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng didn't sleep. The two of them each held a laptop and worked together to restore all the data on the White Swan plane. Gu Nianji first recorded all the flight parameters and showed them to Hua Xiaoheng for him to confirm and correct. Hua Xiaoheng restored the blurry background in the photo that Vladimir had posted on his WeChat moments. Then Gu Nianji used the drawing software to draw the entire cockpit from memory. She didn't have any special talent in art. The sketch of the cockpit drawn by the drawing software could only be said to be good in general directions and specific markings, but it was a few degrees uglier than the original cockpit. Hua Xiaoheng first looked at the flight parameters and realized that Gu Nianji was really amazing. There were so many flight parameters that looked like rolling wheels, but she actually remembered them clearly. From his experience, there wasn't a single mistake. However, when he saw the cockpit drawing that Gu Nianji had drawn with the drawing software, he still breathed a sigh of relief. Gu Nianji quickly asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" "No. It's just that the drawing isn't good." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and patted her head. Gu Nianji pouted and looked unhappy. Hua Xiaoheng leaned over and pressed his head against hers. He said calmly, "I don't want you to be too smart." Hua Xiaoheng sometimes felt a sense of insecurity when Gu Nianji was too smart. He was afraid that she would disappear one day. Now that he saw that she was also lacking in strength, he didn't feel any regret. Instead, he felt that this was perfect. Having regrets was the only way to be perfect. Only then could she be with him forever. This was the second big chapter of the day, chapter 1234, A Surprise for You. It was the third watch at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1245. He didn't want her to be smart? What did he mean? Although Gu Nianji didn't think much of it, her mood improved. She wrapped her arms around Hua Xiaoheng's neck and smiled. "Does that mean you'll love me whether I'm smart or stupid?" Hua Xiaoheng pretended to think for a moment and said, "Of course you can't be too stupid. You don't have to be too smart. Just be normal." "Who would believe you?" Gu Nianji pushed him away and continued to bury herself in her data review. The two of them worked all night and finally finished all the data and drawings. They sent it back to the Special Operations Forces cloud account. Because they used the Nandu satellite communication and navigation system developed by their own country to surf the internet and communicate, they didn't have to worry about leaks when surfing the internet or making phone calls. Seeing the lavender dawn outside the window, Hua Xiaoheng stretched out his long legs and asked Gu Nianji, "Are you tired? Why don't you rest in the hotel today?" Today was the opening ceremony of the International Special Forces competition. Hua Xiaoheng had come to Moscow mainly for this matter. After showing his face at the opening ceremony, he could retire. Gu Nianji wasn't sleepy. Although she had been busy all night, she was still extremely excited from Hua Xiaoheng's proposal yesterday. She shook her head reluctantly. But I want to see you sitting on the podium. Just like the lyrics, you're in the middle of 10,000 people, feeling the glory. Hua Xiaoheng had never cared about these superficial etiquettes, but when he thought of Gu Nianji looking at him in fascination, he felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction and joy in his heart. But you didn't sleep all night. Hua Xiaoheng was worried that her body couldn't take it. Gu Nianji stood up and paced back and forth in the room. I'm fine. Look at me. Do I look sleepy? Hua Xiaoheng squinted at her. After a hard night, her little face was still pale and pink, like a hot-boiled egg that had just been peeled. Her big eyes twinkled and she didn't look tired at all. Her curled lips were red and moist, and the faint blush on her cheeks made her look good from the inside out. How did she look like she had stayed up all night? Hua Xiaoheng was puzzled. It was normal for him to stay up late, but Gu Nianji had grown up with him and rarely stayed up late. Whenever it was time to sleep, as long as he was at home, he would urge her to go to bed. His daily routine was the same as that of the soldiers in the military camp. Are you really not tired? Hua Xiaoheng frowned. You didn't drink those stimulants, did you? You think too much. Gu Nianji pursed her lips. Wasn't it because she was gifted? Or was it because she was in a good mood so her body and spirit were good? Gu Nianji made a face and was about to continue persuading Hua Xiaoheng when her phone rang on the coffee table. Gu Nianji walked over, picked it up and swiped it open. It was still the special Russian number. It was the number of the man who had personally called to thank her for saving little Demi and said that he would give her a big gift. Hello? Hello, our Mr. President would like to invite you to attend the opening ceremony of the International Special Forces competition today. Do you have time to attend? The person over there asked politely. The person who spoke was not the man from last time. It seemed to be his subordinate. Gu Nianji froze for a moment before quickly replying, I have time. I have time. Sigh. The Russian president had personally invited her to attend the opening ceremony of the International Special Forces competition. How could she say no? How could Hua Xiaoheng refuse? Gu Nianji smiled proudly and handed the phone to Hua Xiaoheng. Look, he personally called to invite me to attend the opening ceremony of the International Special Forces competition. Hua Xiaoheng. The two of them packed up and left the hotel. They planned to go to the military camp where the Wuxia Empire's special forces were competing. Hua Xiaoheng was the highest-ranking official and military officer among the leaders leading the team this time. Although he didn't manage things, he was the highest leader in name. He had to enter the arena with his country's special forces. But as soon as they left the hotel, they saw the familiar jeep. The second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, crossed his arms and leaned against the door of the jeep. He held a cigar in his other hand and puffed. When he saw Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji come out, he quickly threw the cigar into the trash can beside him and walked over with a smile. Sirius, I was ordered to pick you up to attend the opening ceremony of the International Special Forces competition. Gu Nianji was surprised. Why are you guys here? How long have you been waiting? Hua Xiaoheng wasn't surprised. If the head of the Russian KGB went to the Wuxia Empire on a business trip, he would also have to send people to keep an eye on him day and night. This was international practice. However, Hua Xiaoheng was a little unhappy that the two of them kept staring at Gu Nianji. He said lightly, She'll go with me. Go with you? Does she have a military rank in your army, or does she have a position? Vladimir rolled his eyes. She's such a good girl. Aren't you embarrassed to sneak into the arena with you? Hua Xiaoheng, that's right, that's right. The middle-aged driver poked his head out of the window and said excitedly, It'll be different if she goes with us. We'll send her in openly and don't worry, we won't do anything to her. Vladimir didn't want to say anything to the middle-aged driver's habit of stealing the show. He expressionlessly reached out and accurately pressed his forehead against the middle-aged driver's, then shoved him back into the window. Sirius, we have the ID from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and an invitation from the President. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Vladimir showed his ID and invitation. Gu Nianji was very surprised to see that her name was really on the invitation. She took the invitation and glanced at it, then said to Hua Xiaoheng, How about I go with them? As long as she could get in, she didn't mind using any method. However, these two had come to her openly with invitations. It was better than following Hua Xiaoheng in, right? Hua Xiaoheng naturally had a way to let Gu Nianji in, but now that she was being watched by the KGB, it would probably be difficult to sneak in. But could he rest assured? However, at this time, Hua Xiaoheng didn't want these people to see Gu Nianji's true position in his heart at all. He would make them think that he valued her and loved her, but not to the point of weakness. If the KGB found out, Hua Xiaoheng knew that it would be a disaster for Gu Nianji, not a blessing. He nodded lightly. If that's the case, then you can go with them. Without looking back, he got into the car that had come to pick him up from the military camp and drove away. Vladimir's eyes widened. He left just like that. Gu Nianji was very confident in Hua Xiaoheng's feelings now. She was no longer as worried about gains and losses as before, so she wasn't unhappy. She spread out her hands in a relaxed manner and smiled. Yes, he's gone. I can only go with you guys. That's right. Sirius, come up quickly. There's a surprise for today's opening ceremony. The middle-aged driver finally poked his head out again. Vladimir sneered. Now that you say that, no matter how big the surprise is, it's all gone. Huh? The middle-aged driver finally shut his mouth and stepped on the accelerator to drive away. The three of them went to have breakfast on the way. Although Gu Nianji had already eaten, Vladimir's warm invitation and all kinds of very down-to-earth grain porridge were very much to her liking. She couldn't help but eat an extra bowl. When they arrived at the park for the opening ceremony, they were almost late. The three of them showed their invitations and were quickly taken in through the fast lane. When they arrived at the venue, Gu Nianji could only exclaim in surprise. In the grassy venue, there were special forces teams from various countries sitting there. All of them had fierce expressions as if they could break your neck with their bare hands at any time. She glanced over and saw the special forces from the Huaxia Empire because they had the best military posture, were the most energetic and were the most handsome. Gu Nianji quickly glanced over but didn't see Hua Xiaoheng sitting in the middle of the special forces. Just as she was wondering, Vladimir pulled her arm and motioned for her to look at the podium. Gu Nianji looked up and saw that Hua Xiaoheng was indeed sitting in the middle of the podium next to the Russian president, Putin. The seat on the other side of the president was empty, which made Hua Xiaoheng stand out even more. The leaders of the special forces from other countries were also sitting on the podium, but Hua Xiaoheng's seat was the most eye-catching. Among so many fierce-looking leaders, Hua Xiaoheng, who was already good-looking, stood out even more. He made the people around him look like scum. Only the president could stand up to Hua Xiaoheng with his 2.8-meter-tall aura. Gu Nianji couldn't help laughing and even waved at the podium. At that moment, a staff member walked over and said to Gu Nianji in English with a smile on his face, "Miss Gu, please come with me. Our president has also saved a seat for you." Vladimir and the driver smiled as they pushed Gu Nianji. Go, we'll protect you from behind." The driver even made a gesture of pointing a gun with his finger. Gu Nianji, she followed the staff member backstage as if she was sleepwalking, then walked up the steps to the podium. The president turned around and saw her. He smiled and waved at her. He said very warmly, "Sirius, come and sit beside me." When he spoke, she didn't know if he forgot to turn off the microphone or if he did it on purpose. A steady and melodious baritone came from the microphone and echoed in the venue. The park, which had been a little noisy, immediately fell silent. Thousands of pairs of eyes looked at her as she walked step by step to the other side of the president. This was the third update of the day, Chapter 1235, Boundless Glory. Good night, my dears. Chapter 1246. Gu Nianji wasn't a timid girl. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to speak so confidently in front of so many people in court. But this time it was too much. She wasn't mentally prepared at all. Just like that, she was singled out by the president and became the focus of everyone's attention. She didn't even know how she had managed to get to the president one step at a time. Hua Xiaoheng, who was sitting on the other side of the president, stood up as well. His gentle and calm gaze fell on her with unknown encouragement and comfort. Only then did she calm down. His wildly beating heart finally settled down, and he was no longer confused and unable to find his bearings. Her gaze gradually focused on the president in front of her. Gu Nianji's courage and aura had returned. She looked at the world-famous president curiously. He was indeed not tall, and he seemed to be a little shorter than Gu Nianji in high heels. But that aura was indeed unparalleled. In front of such a person, superficial things like figure and appearance were not worth mentioning. What you felt was the aura that person released from the inside out. It was as steady as a mountain, as if the world was just a globe in his hand. A casual spin of his hand would have an indescribable impact on the world. He wasn't very handsome, but when you looked at him, you couldn't help but be attracted to him. Hua Xiaoheng also had this kind of indescribable charm. Could this be the unique temperament of soldiers on special battlefronts like them? Gu Nianji's mind was running wild and she wasn't nervous at all. She politely shook the president's outstretched hand and smiled. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. President." "Serious, you're welcome." The Russian president, Pushin, held Gu Nianji's hand, but had no intention of letting go. Pulling her to stand beside him, Pushin smiled at the thousands of the most powerful Special Forces soldiers from various countries below the podium. "Before today's opening ceremony, I want to announce a piece of good news." The simultaneous interpreter translated President Pushin's words into English, German, French, and Mandarin for everyone to hear. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat, and then her eyes widened as she looked at Hua Xiaoheng in surprise and joy. Hua Xiaoheng was also slightly stunned, but he quickly felt relieved. Since President Pushin had such good intentions, he appreciated it. He nodded at Gu Nianji calmly and told her not to worry. As long as Hua Xiaoheng was by her side, she had nothing to be afraid of. She smiled and looked at President Pushin. On the lawn below the rostrum, everyone seemed to have come back to their senses and began to whisper to each other, trying to find out what good news the president would announce today. Is the president going to remarry? No way. Or announce that he has a son. You must die. Our president only has 2 daughters. Yes, there are only 2 daughters, not no sons. Everyone laughed tacitly. Someone asked, "What's the background of that Oriental girl? Although she's also very beautiful, I don't think Pushin would fancy such a little girl." Just as everyone was speculating, President Pushin said, "Yesterday I was fortunate enough to witness the most beautiful and shocking proposal. In front of our tomb of the unknown warrior, Major General Hua Xiaoheng of the Huaxia Empire proposed to his beloved woman, Sirius." And Sirius didn't hesitate at all. She was very touched and immediately agreed to his proposal. As soon as the simultaneous interpreter finished translating, the park, which had just become lively, instantly fell into an unprecedented silence. It was as if even the air had frozen. The expressions of the Special Forces soldiers went blank for a moment, and their gazes once again turned to Gu Nianji. This little girl, who looked delicate and weak as if she would be blown away by the wind, had actually agreed to a soldier's proposal in front of the tomb of the unknown warrior. They all knew what the tomb of the unknown warrior in Moscow meant to soldiers. Although most of them weren't Russian soldiers, the tomb of the unknown warrior had a great attraction to soldiers from all over the world. Almost every soldier who knew about the tomb of the unknown warrior couldn't help but maintain the due respect and reverence for it. Because respecting it was the same as respecting themselves. Everyone looked at Gu Nianji with less ridicule and mockery, but more respect and love. As for Hua Xiaoheng, these soldiers were practically gnashing their teeth. It was one thing for him to have King amazing military skills and to have beaten up the special forces of other countries in the International Special Forces competition. But now that he was in a high position of power, he actually had such a beautiful little girl who could understand him as his fiancée. This didn't make sense. Wasn't it said that you couldn't have your cake and eat it too? Winning in life was the most annoying thing. Not convinced, not convinced. Hua Xiaoheng didn't feel the envious, jealous and hateful gazes below the podium. His face was expressionless, but he wasn't indifferent either. He was calm and collected, and his focused gaze was focused on Gu Nianji. He didn't know how President Pushin's actions would affect Gu Nianji's mental state, but he knew that at this moment, the whole world was watching. If Gu Nianji lost her composure even a little, it would be magnified infinitely. In the future, it would become a topic of humiliation for her and a psychological trauma. Therefore, he had been looking at her with an unprecedented gentleness, hoping that she could understand that with him by her side, she had nothing to worry about or be afraid of. Gu Nianji had indeed calmed down a long time ago. When President Pushin held her hand and said the first sentence, she understood what he was going to say. She didn't flinch, nor was she embarrassed, nor was she bashful. She stood gracefully beside President Pushin, and her gaze met Hua Xiaoheng's from time to time. Occasionally she would look at President Pushin, who was speaking with confidence and composure. It was as if this scene had been rehearsed thousands of times, and it was an elegant 360-degree gesture without any blind spots. On the Russian television and online broadcasting side, the KGB driver and his boss, Vladimir, were closely watching the recording and broadcasting of all the videos. The two of them used their power for personal gain, and they didn't allow any negative influence on Gu Nianji to appear. "Hey, your camera isn't good. It's too far off. Sirius's side profile is the most beautiful at a 45-degree angle. What do you mean by shooting her chin from the bottom to the top?" Although the KGB driver didn't act properly in front of Gunyenji, he was still very authoritative in front of the staff below. These people were all afraid of the KGB. You. Yes, I'm talking about you. When our Sirius went on stage just now, it was a little awkward. Cut it off. Don't broadcast it. If you dare broadcast it, I'll investigate your background. And you, when you film our president, you have to film Sirius as well. Didn't you see how much respect our president gave Sirius? How dare you make things difficult for the president? There's also BGM. Use a master-level composition, understand? This video needs to be edited well. The president wants to give it to Sirius as a souvenir. If you embarrass us, see how I'll deal with you little brats. At this time, Vladimir stood at the side without saying a word. He suddenly became habitually deaf. The staff in charge of the broadcast were furious at the driver, but they didn't dare to say anything. They could only complain to his boss, Vladimir. In the end, they realized that it didn't work at all. Vladimir looked like he was still asleep and ignored what they said. After some time, everyone understood what he meant. They didn't dare to make any more big news, so they obediently filmed Gunyenji beautifully. Although it was only a temporary stage, the angle, lighting, various backgrounds, and even the BGM were all at the level of a world-class artist. The Russians were indeed very talented in art. They perked up and filmed the scene on the podium like a Hollywood blockbuster. President Putin was silent for a moment, then smiled and glanced at the audience, then said, "I'm very happy to witness their engagement ceremony. I hope that if I have the chance, I can also attend their wedding and be their witness." As soon as the simultaneous interpreter finished translating, there was a whoosh. The entire audience was instantly in an uproar. What kind of high-class wedding was this? And the Russian president was a witness. *CK. Now they had to rub their hands together to build a good relationship with these people from the Wuxia Empire, just to get a wedding invitation and join in the fun. Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng were a little surprised. The two of them looked at each other without batting an eyelid. Hua Xiaoheng immediately said in Russian, "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. President. We couldn't ask for more for you to come to our wedding. You witnessed our engagement, and being able to witness our wedding is the best wedding gift I can give my fiancée. I hope you will take the time to come." President Putin nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Gunyenji and said in English with a smile, "What about you? Sirius, are you willing to let me be your witness?" Gunyenji's face was already flushed and she nodded vigorously. "We couldn't ask for more. It would be our honor." Then she couldn't help saying, "You're really coming, right? Don't make me happy for nothing." As soon as she finished speaking, she regretted it so much that she almost bit off her tongue. How could she say such a thing in public? She was practically insulting President Putin. But it was too late for regret. Her voice traveled through the microphone to the audience below the podium. The Special Forces soldiers who had just been in shock burst into laughter. Some slapped their thighs, some whistled, and some threw their hats into the air. The scene suddenly became a mess. But no one stopped them. Everyone laughed until they cried. Even the instructors and team leaders were holding their bellies. President Putin laughed especially happily. He turned to Hua Xiaoheng and said, "I finally understand why you proposed at the tomb of the unknown warrior. Without our ancestors to hold the fort, you probably wouldn't have been able to take down this crafty and clever little girl." Gunyenji closed her eyes. She felt extremely happy. In the broadcast area below the podium, the KGB driver and his boss, Vladimir, stared at the small control screen with their mouths agape. The middle-aged driver pinched Vladimir hard. "Why did you pinch me?" Vladimir kicked the driver back. "Sirius, you actually dared to talk back to our president." The driver said in a trembling voice, "I want to know if I'm dreaming." "Don't you know if you're dreaming or not? Don't you know how to pinch yourself?" Vladimir was so angry that he kicked him a few more times. Then he took out his phone and posted on his WeChat moments. "Vladimir KGB 2. The president has been rebuked in person. I've witnessed history." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1236, I've Witnessed History. The second update was at 1 p.m. and the third update was at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1247. On the lawn not far away, Reinitz was sitting in the Special Forces area of his country. He didn't go up to the podium as the leader. At first, he didn't want to show his face because he had decided to spend the rest of his life serving God. He didn't expect to see Gunyenji walk up to the podium. He looked at the blushing, beautiful girl on the podium in surprise and couldn't help drawing a cross on his chest. "May God bless you, my girl." He prayed silently in his heart. On the podium, President Putin held Gu Nianji with one hand and Hua Xiaoheng with the other. He put their hands together and smiled at the thousands of the most elite special forces soldiers from all countries present. May God bless you with happiness. The sunlight shone through the thick treetops and shone on the podium. The huge diamond ring on Gu Nianji's hand finally revealed its true appearance. Whether it was the experienced special forces soldiers present or the audience in front of the television, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. This was probably the biggest diamond ring they had ever seen. It was truly a quail egg. At the same time, the video on the official website of the Russian television station, which was broadcast simultaneously on the internet, was quickly uploaded to the internet by European and American audiences. The international special forces competition wasn't a hot topic that netizens usually paid attention to. Its news effect in the West was far less than that of Justin, the Prince of Love songs. The news effect of Bieber finding his girlfriend. Therefore, in the beginning the video was only a small group of military fans. But soon, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's good-looking appearance, the engagement ceremony blessed by the Russian president, and the huge diamond ring on Gu Nianji's hand, which made all the wedding rings of celebrities in Europe and the United States pale in comparison, quickly became a fashion hot topic. On Twitter, many designers and directors of luxury jewelry brands were talking about the origin of the large diamond on the ring. The designer and director of Van Cleef & Arpels personally tweeted to claim the diamond ring on Gu Nianji's hand. She wrote, "The customer paid a raw stone to order a diamond ring from us. It's an honor for Van Cleef & Arpels to be able to personally embed this Grand Duke Josephine diamond to contribute to this newlyweds. Oh, by the way, this diamond has been renamed Sirius. Gu is the name of the bride-to-be. Congratulations on your engagement." As soon as her tweet was posted, it was reposted millions of times within an hour. It immediately broke Twitter's record and even caused the server to crash twice. It was a veritable hot search. This trend began to ferment within the Wuxia Empire, and it also began from the forums of small groups of military fans. A military fan of President Putin uploaded the video to Weibo and tagged several fashion influencers and military influencers at the same time. The topic was, #winner in life #, someone else's engagement ceremony #very soon. Everyone noticed it and started to forward it. #Emperor Putin my idol. #holy shit. The wedding of these two is going to go to heaven. #Major General Hua is my idol. Cheers for my Adonis. #I'm the only one touched. Did they get engaged in front of the tomb of the unknown warrior? #you're not alone #. In the beginning this craze was not obvious. However, when a fashion-verified account and a military-verified account personally appeared, the number of reposts, comments, and likes immediately increased exponentially. Weibo's server was much stronger than Twitter's, but it still couldn't withstand this kind of popularity. Because in this video not only were there iron-blooded and handsome soldiers, but there was also a powerful and extremely famous president, as well as a beautiful female lead with 360-degree flawless features, and a super-large diamond ring that people could only be convinced of. Almost all kinds of popular elements could be found in this video. Hua Xiaoheng himself was already very well known among the people of the Wuxia Empire. This time he was wearing a well-ironed military uniform. His handsome face was even more outstanding when set off by the beast-like leader of a foreign country. He was an existence that was as shocking as a celestial being. Whether it was in terms of appearance or actual achievements, they were all winning glory for the country. As a result, the Wuxia Empire's internet went crazy for the couple within a few hours. Ma Qiqi was browsing Weibo at school when she saw this scene. She was surprised and delighted. She was so happy that she walked in circles in the library and was almost kicked out by the library teacher. She bombarded Gu Nianji with a series of messages on WeChat and asked eagerly, "What's going on?" Gu Nianji didn't have time to reply in detail at the time, so she only typed 2 words, "Wait." Ma Qiqi had to wait until the next day before she spoke to Gu Nianji. At this time, this trend quickly spread from the internet to the main Wuxia Empire television station's 7 p.m. news time. The video was broadcasted on the news programs watched by hundreds of millions of people. General Ji and Speaker Long, who didn't go online much but were used to watching the news at 7 p.m. every day, stayed in front of the television. After the news was broadcasted, General Ji and Speaker Long picked up their phones at the same time and called each other. In the end, both sides showed that the line was busy. The two of them. Later, General Ji hesitated for a moment and Speaker Long, who was even more anxious, finally called. "Ji, what's going on? What's going on with the two of them? Why are they engaged? And the Russian president is even going to be their witness. Speaker Long's heart was about to explode. It wasn't easy for him to find a suitable successor, but was it easy for him? He hadn't even had the chance to show off in front of General G, and now he was abducted by General G's people. General G came back to his senses and rubbed the back of his head with his hand. He laughed so hard that his eyes couldn't be seen. "Oh, I say, old Long, don't be so agitated. Be careful not to have a heart attack. Do you have a nitroglycerin tablet with you? I advise you to take a nitroglycerin tablet first before you talk to me." Nitroglycerin tablets were a good medicine for acute angina pectoris, and the effect was rapid and significant. Speaker Long was so angry that he almost jumped up from the sofa. "Good old G. Tell me, how many things have you been hiding from me? Did you already know about the two of them?" General G pretended to be deaf and dumb. "Oh, when did I hide anything? This is their private matter. As their superior, I can't meddle in other people's private matters, don't you think?" Speaker Long didn't believe a single word. He snorted coldly and wished he could throw the phone away. But when he thought about how the Russian president had expressed his desire to attend the wedding, they definitely couldn't sit idly by. However, Speaker Long was still struggling. "Old Jean Yenji is still young. She's not even 20 years old yet. There's no need to get married so early, right? Our country's marriage law stipulates that men and women can get married at the age of 18. Nianji is already 19 and she'll be 20 in the second half of this year." General G secretly laughed in his heart. He thought to himself that they were already married. Now that they were getting engaged, it was probably to prepare for the wedding. Speaker Long was at his wit's end and muttered, "I have to discuss this with General Bai. Are you free tomorrow? Come to the Senate and let's have a closed-door meeting." Since the Russian president had to attend Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji's wedding and be a witness, this was no longer a matter between the two of them, but a matter of national importance. General G happily agreed and planned to have a meeting with Speaker Long and Prime Minister by tomorrow. After Speaker Long's call, the two of them called Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng at the same time. However, at this time, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were attending a dinner party hosted by President Pushin, so they didn't have time to answer the phone. JavaScript. At this time, in the Hua family's mansion in the military compound, Hua Guanchen and Hua Shuilong were the few people who didn't go online or watch TV. Hua Guanchen wasn't interested in any of this. He preferred to read his professional books. Hua Xuanong, on the other hand, had lost interest after being forcibly discharged from the military and stripped of his military rank. Other than watching TV dramas online, he didn't care about anything else. During dinner, Hua Xuanong was still saying to Hua Guanchen, "Do you care about Xiaoheng's marriage? How old is he? Is he really going to be involved with that little orphan girl of unknown origin for the rest of his life? You're a father and you don't even care?" Hua Guanchen frowned and said, "There's no suitable candidate at the moment." He had originally thought very highly of Tan Guirin, but with Tan Dongbang in prison and Kai Songyin losing power, Hua Guanchen didn't want to have anything to do with Tan Guirin at all. If Hua Xiaoheng married Tan Guirin, it wouldn't be a help, but a hindrance. He was a biological father, so how could he cheat his own son like this? This was the second watch of the day, Chapter 1237, Winner in Life. 8 p.m. the third watch. Moi. Chapter 1248. You haven't found a suitable candidate? Hua Xuanong's eyes flashed, and he changed his tone. He said regretfully, "Actually, I can understand Xiaoheng. The men of our Hua family are all affectionate. Since he's together with that little orphan girl of unknown origin, he won't just stand by and watch." At this moment he thought of the head nurse, Zhang Feng, who had followed him for many years. Hua Jialan glanced at Hua Xuanong and nodded slightly. Hua Xuanong sighed and patted her hand. "Then I'll have to trouble Jialan." "Don't say that. It's my honor to help you and Uncle Hua," Hua Jialan said with a smile. Hua Guanchen was surprised to hear Hua Jialan call him Uncle Hua instead of Uncle. Ever since Hua Xuanong's accident, Hua Jialan had been by his side for more than a year. He loved this granddaughter of his more and more. He said kindly, "It's like this. Since Xiaoheng can't be separated from that little orphan girl, and we don't want this to affect Xiaoheng's future career, Jialan suggested that she could restore her identity and marry Xiaoheng." Hua Guanchen, was he retarded or was his father retarded? Why couldn't he understand what she was saying? Hua Xuanong looked at Hua Guanchen's confused expression and continued, "Actually, Jialan has already changed her name. Now she's following her mother's surname Luo, not Hua. She's also moved out of the old family's household registration. Hua Jialan was not the biological daughter of Hua Xuanong's eldest son, Hua Guanyuan, but the posthumous child of his comrade. At the time, Hua Guanyuan had been entrusted by his fallen comrade to take care of his fiancée, Luo Xinxue. Unexpectedly, Luo Xinxue was already pregnant at that time. In that era, women who got pregnant before marriage were despised. For the sake of her reputation and for the sake of his comrade's orphan to grow up with dignity, and because Hua Guanyuan had no intention of dating or marrying another woman, he suggested to Luo Xinxue that the two of them should fake their marriage. It would kill two birds with one stone. Luo Xinxue had a family that could protect her and her child. He also had a shield, so his parents wouldn't urge him to get married again. Hua Jialan, no, Luo Jialan thought about what her mother Luo Xinxue had once told her and felt very upset. She really didn't expect that her father Hua Guanyuan and her mother Luo Xinxue had been married for so many years, but they hadn't even touched her once. Of course, from Hua Guanyuan's point, there was nothing wrong with this. Luo Xinxue was his comrade's widow. He married her to cover up the fact that she was pregnant out of wedlock. If he hadn't taken advantage of her, he wouldn't have slept with her. Luo Jialan's biological father was an orphan. His parents died and he grew up with distant relatives. After his death, those distant relatives took all of his pension and inheritance. No one cared about Luo Xinxue at all. At that time, Luo Xinxue was only a fiancée that the two of them had privately agreed to marry. Legally, she had no right to inherit unless she gave birth to a child and used the child to fight for the right to inherit the estate. But Luo Xinxue was not so strong-willed and capable. If Hua Guanyuan hadn't proposed a fake marriage with Luo Xinxue to save his reputation, Hua Jialan might not have been born, or she might have lived at the bottom of society. Hua Lili, Luo Gyud. Luo. The luckiest thing in her life was marrying Hua Guanyuan. Hua Guanyuan was such a good man. He had a good family background and good looks. From the photos he looked extraordinarily handsome, only slightly less handsome than Hua Xiaoheng. He was many times better than her biological father. No wonder her mother Luo Xinxue couldn't help falling in love with Hua Guanyu. Unfortunately, both of them died early. Luo Jialan lowered her eyes and said softly, "The Hua family has raised me for so many years, I have to share the responsibility for Uncle Hua and Grandpa Hua. Since Brother Hua loves Gunyinji so much, it doesn't matter. He can be with her. As long as they don't get married, no one will gossip." Hua Guanshan still did not understand. Hua Xuanong rolled his eyes at him. What Jialan means is that she only wants the title. It was a fake marriage to Xiaoheng, so Xiaoheng could still be with Gunyinji. Even if they were to be together for the rest of their lives, it would be fine as long as it was hidden and no one found out. This way he can be with the person he likes and it won't affect his career. Isn't it the best of both worlds? Hua Guanshan finally understood and frowned. The words fake marriage reminded him of his older brother, Hua Guanyuan. As expected, Luo Jialan continued, "Uncle Hua can fake a marriage with my mother for the sake of my mother and me's lifelong happiness. I can also fake a marriage with Brother Hua for the sake of the Hua family's reputation. Brother Hua doesn't have to care about me. He doesn't have to treat me as his wife. It's just a marriage certificate. It won't affect his relationship with Gunyinji in the slightest." There were so many mistresses who were dependent on high-ranking officials and wealthy businessmen. They would only be grateful to a legal wife like her who didn't care about them, right? Gunyinji was an arrogant, domineering, and uncultured woman. She didn't deserve to marry into the Hua family at all. Luo Jialan's eyes were slightly cold. Before Hua Guanshan could look at her thoughtfully, she quickly lowered her head and took a sip of soup. "Yes, it's just a marriage certificate. This way Xiaoheng's future promotion will look better on his profile. People will think there's something wrong with him if he still writes unmarried, at such an old age." Hua Xuanong waved his hand in dissatisfaction. Hua Guanshan was silent for a long time before saying, "This is no small matter. I need to think about it." He wasn't a fool. Was there a need to say who would benefit more from Luo Jialan's actions? His son, Hua Xiaoheng, was going to take over General Ji's position in the future. Why did he have to get himself a wife like Luo Jialan, who had neither gratitude nor feelings for him? Even if it was a fake marriage with his son's status, as long as she was his wife, she would enjoy the same treatment. Hua Guanshan didn't agree immediately. Luo Jialan was a little surprised and glanced at Hua Xuanong anxiously. Hua Xuanong wasn't very satisfied either. He said to Hua Guanshan, "What's there to think about? It's just a marriage certificate. I didn't ask him to really be with Jialan. If we're talking about losing out, it's our Jialan who's losing out." The veins on Huo Guanshan's forehead throbbed. So marrying his son was still a grievance to Luo Jialan. The old man was getting old. Was his dementia acting up prematurely? He couldn't differentiate between close and distant, nor could he differentiate between close and distant. Now he couldn't even differentiate between good and bad. Huo Guanshan suppressed his anger and said bluntly, "This is no small matter. We need to think about it for the long term. Although I'm not very satisfied with Gunyanji, Jialan's situation isn't much better than Gunyanji's. In fact, it's far worse than Gunyanji's." Other than Luo Jialan's biological father being a martyr, there was nothing in the family that could help Huo Xiaoheng. Moreover, although Gunyanji's background was unknown, at least she had the skills and ability. Even Huo Guanshan couldn't deny this. What skills and ability did Luo Jialan have? She probably only had the ability to spend money. The corners of Huo Guanshan's mouth twitched, but he didn't point it out. Luo Jialan understood what Huo Guanshan meant and couldn't help but be furious. She was so angry that her chest rose and fell, and her hand holding the chopsticks was trembling. This was ridiculous. She actually thought that Gunyanji was better than her. How was Gunyanji better than her? The only thing that was better than her was that she was a straight-A student who could study. However, Gunyanji, who grew up in the military camp, knew nothing about the ways of the world and the social interactions of the upper class. Luo Jialan was indignant, while Huo Xuanong looked disapproving. Huo Guanshan got up and was about to leave the dining room when he suddenly heard his phone ring. He took out his phone and saw that it was a call from General Ji. He quickly picked it up and asked, "General Ji, have you had dinner?" General Ji chuckled and said, "I just finished. By the way, Guanshan, what are your plans for Xiaoheng's wedding?" Huo Guanshan was confused. Wedding? Xiaoheng doesn't even have a fiancé, so how can there be a wedding? He just got a fiancé. General Ji laughed. Guanshan, you haven't watched TV or gone online, have you? You can't be like this. You're out of touch with the times and it's not good for your work. Turn on the TV and watch the news. You'll know what I mean. There was also a wall-mounted TV in the Huo family's dining room. Huo Guanshan picked up the remote control and turned on the TV in confusion. It was already past time for the news, but all the major TV stations were broadcasting this hot news. Major General Huo Xiaoheng and his fiancée Gunyanji were engaged in front of the tomb of the unknown warrior in Moscow, Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin was not only a witness to their engagement, but also a witness to their wedding. Crash! The wine glass in Luo Jialan's hand fell to the ground and shattered. The red wine splashed all over her. However, she was at a loss. She just stared at Gunyanji's fair, tender and beautiful face on the TV screen. She wanted nothing more than to slash it with a knife. This was the third update of the day, chapter 1238, How am I better than her? Good night, dear ones. Chapter 1249. Huo Guanshan stared at the TV screen that was playing the popular video. His mouth suddenly opened wide, and his eyes almost popped out of his head in shock. Standing next to the internationally renowned Russian president, Putin, was a man in a neat and handsome major general uniform. It was his son, Huo Xiaoheng, whom he had always been proud of. And the woman standing on the other side of the president, who was graceful, had a sweet smile, and had an elegant demeanor. Could it be Gunyanji? Huo Guanshan couldn't help blinking. When he took a closer look, it was indeed Gunyanji. Was he supposed to look at her in a different light? In his impression, Gunyanji was still the little girl Huo Xiaoheng had brought home for the first time for New Year's. She was eloquent, liked to nitpick, and was unforgiving. He didn't like this kind of woman very much. In addition, there was something wrong with her background, so he had always been firmly against his son getting together with her. He didn't expect his son to not take him seriously. He directly proposed to someone outside and even made big news. He wanted to see how Huo Xiaoheng was going to marry Gunyanji if he didn't agree. Just as Huo Guanshan was secretly venting his anger, the popular video on the TV had already shown President Putin speaking. The simultaneous translation used by the Huaxia Empire TV station was in Mandarin. The president smiled and said, "I'm very happy to witness their engagement ceremony. I hope that if I have the chance I can also attend their wedding and be their witness." Boom. President Putin's words were like a nuclear bomb hitting Huo Guanshan's head. He had just vowed to teach Huo Xiaoheng and Gunyanji a lesson by not letting Gunyanji marry into the family. Now, he had been struck by lightning and was seething with anger. Huo Guanshan's vision turned black, and his head was a little dizzy. His entire body swayed and his legs could barely support his body. He held onto the dining table and finally stood up. He panted heavily and his chest was so tight that it was about to explode. The dining room was unusually quiet. Hua Guanchen finally remembered to look back and realized that Hua Xuanong was in a worse state than him. Hua Xuanong was already over 70 years old, and his hair was white. At this moment, his eyes were staring straight at the TV, and his face was getting redder and redder, gradually turning into the color of a pig's liver. His eyes were bloodshot and one of his hands trembled in the air. Finally he slammed the dining table. Nonsense. What nonsense? This joke has reached the international level. Get that kid back here. I'll teach him a good lesson. The corners of Hua Guanchen's mouth twitched and his gaze turned cold. He put his hands behind his back and looked at Hua Xuanong. He slowly asked again, "Dad, what did you say? I didn't catch what you just said. Could you repeat it?" Hua Xuanong flew into a rage out of humiliation. He pointed at Hua Guanchen's nose and yelled, "I said he's messing around. What's wrong? I can't say it. Without the consent of the elders, I'll see if he dares to marry that woman. The Russian president is the witness. Dad, do you think your words still count?" Hua Guanchen was so angry that he laughed. "Besides, as his father, I don't object to it. You're already a generation apart, and you still want to interfere with Xiaoheng's marriage? How dare you disobey me? You unfilial son." Hua Xuanong picked up the teacup on the dining table and threw it at Hua Guanchen. Hua Guanchen quickly moved to the side but was still splashed by the tea. "If my boss was still alive, you wouldn't have the right to jump around." Hua Xuanong thought of his eldest son, Hua Guanyuan, who had sacrificed himself in the line of duty more than 10 years ago. His insides were burning and tears streamed down his face. "You've been inferior to your brother since you were young. Why weren't you the one who died back then?" "Ha, you finally said it? Yes, I also regret that I wasn't the one who died back then." Hua Guanchen's eyes were red. If it was possible, he sincerely hoped that he was the one who died back then so he wouldn't have to face the endless anger, embarrassment, humiliation, and regret that had followed for more than 10 years. Although his brother had always been stronger than him, he had never been jealous of him. Instead, he sincerely admired and respected him. It wasn't until later that he found out that his brother had been coveting his wife, the woman he loved the most. This kind of humiliation was something no man could tolerate. Hua Guanchen and Hua Xuanong opened up old wounds and used the most hurtful words to attack each other. No one went to watch TV anymore. Luo Jialan turned a deaf ear to them and just stared straight at the TV screen. At that moment, the camera on the TV screen flashed and gave a huge high-definition close-up of the engagement ring on Gun Yanji's hand. The moon under the sun. This was Luo Jialan's first reaction. Then her mind buzzed and she suddenly stood up. She covered her mouth in shock, and her facial features were almost distorted. She had seen the diamond on that ring before. Although she had only seen it once when her grandmother was still alive, she had taken it out for Hua Xiaoheng to see. At that time she had stood at the door and peeked in through the crack. She had heard her grandmother say to Hua Xiaoheng with her own ears, "Xiaoheng, Grandma left this stone for you. In the future, give it to your sweetheart, to your wife who you really want to spend the rest of your life with." That diamond was so big and shiny that even after so many years Luo Jialan could still clearly remember every side of the diamond. That kind of gentle and restrained, but also dazzling brilliance was unforgettable to anyone who had seen it. She hadn't expected the Hua family's heirloom to fall into the hands of a woman like Gun Yanji. This diamond was clearly hers. Everything Gun Yanji was going to get was snatched away from her. Luo Jialan's face twitched, and jealousy and hatred were like a poisonous snake coiling in her heart. She really didn't get along with someone like Gun Yanji. Luo Jialan gradually calmed down, and an extremely vicious glint flashed across her eyes. If Gun Yanji didn't exist in this world, how wonderful would her life be? At that moment, Luo Jialan actually had a faint feeling that Gun Yanji shouldn't exist in this world at all. It was all because of her. She had stolen the man she had had a crush on since she was young, stolen her status, and now she was going to steal her marriage. How could there be such a shameless person in the world? Why wouldn't she die? Luo Jialan gripped the edge of the dining table tightly with both hands. She was so strong that she almost dug a hole in the very hard rosewood dining table. There was a deeper layer of fear in her heart. She knew that if she couldn't marry Hua Xiaoheng, everything would be over for her. The fund that her grandmother had left to her father had originally been in her hands, but Gun Yanji had already threatened to make her spit it out. Also, she had only wanted to teach that mental patient, Song Jining, a lesson. After all, her mother had died because of her. So what if she made her suffer a little? Hua Xiaoheng was known in the military for never being biased, but when it came to his own family matters he couldn't be fair at all. Because Song Jining was his mother he was extremely biased. He didn't even think about it. Because Song Jining was between her father and mother, her mother had been depressed for more than 10 years. As her daughter, she knew very well that her mother had been depressed for more than 10 years. So what if she stood up for her mother? Why couldn't Hua Xiaoheng understand her? If it weren't for Song Jining, her father, Hua Guanyuan, and her mother, Luo Xingxue, would have become real husband and wife a long time ago. She wouldn't have needed to rack her brains to please Hua Xuanong just to find a backer for herself. After thinking about it for so long, the only way she could come up with to get out of this predicament was to marry Hua Xiaoheng. As long as she married Hua Xiaoheng, all her problems would be solved. She had worked hard for more than a year and finally convinced Hua Xuanong. When Hua Xiaoheng had no choice but to get married, she would ask Hua Xuanong to convince Hua Guanchen, and she would get her marriage certificate. To her, everything else was fake. Only the marriage certificate was real. As long as she had the marriage certificate, she would be able to pull Hua Xiaoheng back from Gunyanji step by step. She really didn't expect that the goal she had worked hard for almost a year would be completely destroyed because of Gunyanji's relationship with the Russian president. Her beautiful dream was shattered into pieces. She knew that she would never be happy in this lifetime. But what was the use? With Gunyanji around, Hua Xiaoheng would never look at her twice. In fact, she had long forgotten that before Gunyanji appeared, Hua Xiaoheng had never looked at her twice. The two of them had grown up in the same family, and Hua Xiaoheng had never treated her more than as a brother and sister. However, Luo Jialan had long known that she wasn't Hua Guanyuan's biological daughter, so she had allowed herself to have a crush on Hua Xiaoheng for so many years. In the end, the man she had guarded for so many years had been snatched away by a little orphan girl who had appeared out of nowhere. A shameless person was truly invincible. Luo Jialan cursed Gunyanji in her heart. She clenched her fists and turned to leave the dining room. When Gunyanji and Hua Xiaoheng returned to China, her good days would come to an end. She couldn't wait any longer. She couldn't wait any longer. Whether it was the fund or the lawsuit that was waiting for her to abuse Song Jining, it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. She had no choice but to cut off all means of retreat or fight with her life on the line. Luo Jialan wasn't the only one who was shocked when Gunyanji's blinding diamond ring appeared on the television screen in the popular video broadcast on the Huaxia Empire TV station. Yijichu was also so surprised that he almost pounced in front of the television. He looked at the diamond ring on Gunyanji's hand with a hint of fanaticism. He rubbed the screen with his hand and felt the ring. He had dreamed about it countless times in the middle of the night. He had wondered what Gunyanji would look like wearing a ring inlaid with Grand Duke Joseph's diamond. The diamond belonged to her, and so did the ring. He was so familiar with the appearance of the ring that he could recite every single one of its data indicators. He had thought that he would never see Gunyanji wearing the ring in his lifetime. He hadn't expected him to see it in the end. Although he hadn't put it on her himself. Yijichu clenched his fists tightly and pressed them against his chest. In the depths of his heart, he felt as if someone had used a barbed knife to stab him alive and gouged him. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. He convulsed and fell to the ground. After 4 years here, this was the first time he had an attack. There was no one at home. Without his permission, no one could step into his house. But so what if he could step into the house? He was a burden to live on. Yijichu smiled bitterly and lay stiffly on the cold floor, unable to move. Just as he was about to give up on saving himself, his phone rang. Yijichu no longer had the strength to swipe open his phone to answer the call. However, he could tell that the ringtone was from his father. The ringtone rang for a long time, echoing in the empty apartment. Yijichu gradually closed his eyes. At that moment, the phone that had been ringing for a long time without anyone picking up flashed a few times. The built-in camera on the phone automatically turned on with a click. Yijichu's father, He Qingjian's face appeared on the phone screen. He called out anxiously, "Jichu? Jichu? What's wrong? Say something. Where are you?" This number was the agreement between He Qingjian and Yijichu. No matter where he was, no matter what he was doing, as long as He Qingjian called, Yijichu had to pick up within 5 minutes. Otherwise, something would have happened to him. Yijichu heard his father's voice and curled his lips slightly. At the last moment before he lost consciousness, he said, "Dad." Then he fell into complete darkness and unconsciousness. This was the first update of the day, chapter 1239, If I Didn't Have You. The second update was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the third update was at 8 o'clock in the evening. My dear friends were anxious. Chapter 1250. The beginning, The beginning? Wake up. The beginning? The eyes of He Qingjian, who had always been mature and dignified, instantly turned red. Watching his son fall to the ground unconscious was the nightmare of every father who loved his child dearly. He looked at him as if he had seen his mother fall to the ground like this that year. If he had gone home earlier, if he had called her earlier, perhaps everything would have been different. He Qingjian's life experiences could almost be compiled into a history textbook. He had gone through countless storms and waves. He was tough and tenacious. His hands were iron-blooded and ruthless. He was also a schemer who would plan before taking action. He had never made a move. Once he made a move, he would definitely kill his opponent. Over the years, everyone who knew him had a consensus. If you weren't prepared to die with him, don't stand on the opposite side of old He. But at this moment he watched his son fall to the ground completely powerless. He had been powerful for so many years, but he couldn't save his wife or his son. It was like a joke. He Qingjian's jaw tightened. He finally picked up the other phone, found Gu Nianji's number and called her. At that moment, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were attending the dinner party that President Pushkin had specially prepared for them. In the hall of the Kremlin, the crystal chandelier was crystal clear and emitted a soft light. The men and women were all dressed in decent evening gowns. They held wine glasses and stood in the hall in twos and threes to talk. In the corner of the hall, there was a band playing moving instruments, and a jazz singer was singing in a low voice. Gu Nianji didn't have the chance to drink. Hua Xiaoheng gave her a glass of grape juice and pretended it was red wine to brush off those who came to toast. After a while, Vladimir walked over and said to Hua Xiaoheng, "Major General Hua, our president has invited you over for a chat." Hua Xiaoheng glanced at Gu Nianji. "Stay here. Don't wander around." "I know. Go ahead." Gu Nianji nodded with a smile and raised the grape juice at him. Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips. "Good girl." He patted her head and turned to leave. Vladimir clicked his tongue and asked, "What are you talking about?" Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were speaking in Mandarin. Gu Nianji swirled the grape juice in her hand and giggled. "He told me to be obedient and not do anything bad." "You will do bad things?" Vladimir sneered, then looked around and said in a low voice, "Little Demi wants to talk to you. Can you come with me to the side hall over there?" After saying that, he promised, "It's not a shady place, it's just the side hall with the curtain over there. Little Demi and his mother can't attend such an occasion." Gu Nianji instantly sympathized with little Demi, but Hua Xiaoheng had told her not to wander around here. While she was hesitating, from the corner of her eye, she saw a corner of the curtain in the small side hall being lifted, revealing little Demi's pink face. She smiled at her attentively and waved desperately. She was just too adorable. Gu Nianji thought that they were in the hall anyway. If they wanted to harm her, they could have done it at any other time. Why did they have to pick this time? She couldn't be too paranoid. So she nodded and said, "Vladimir, I believe you." She then followed him to the side hall. Vladimir was halfway there when he suddenly turned around and said expressionlessly, "Serious, I'm not that trustworthy. Don't trust others too easily." Gu Nianji, "But now you can trust me. I'm not lying to you." Vladimir winked again and laughed out loud. He quickly returned to his previous self. Gu Nianji suddenly missed the middle-aged driver who gave Vladimir a headache. She smiled and said, "Then I'll verify everything you say with the middle-aged driver in the future. I'll probably know if I can trust you or not." Vladimir? You win? That subordinate of his was simply his nemesis. He had already kicked him to another department several times, but after going around in circles, he ended up returning to his department. After that, Vladimir had resigned himself to his fate. Apart from the fact that the middle-aged driver liked to talk nonsense and was prone to acting, he didn't have any other problems. It was better than those who looked extremely obedient but suddenly stabbed you in the back. Gu Nianji thought about it and immediately took out her phone. She opened WeChat and wanted to add the middle-aged driver and Vladimir to a small group. In the end, she found that there was no internet signal at all, not even a cell phone signal. Gu Nianji frowned and walked around Vladimir with her phone in her hand to find a signal. She was very puzzled. Her phone used the Nandu satellite communication system developed by the Huaxia Empire itself. How could she not receive a signal? Vladimir was speechless and said unhappily, "Don't bother. All signals are blocked here. If you want to make a call, you can only use the landline. Not to mention the internet." Gu Nianji pursed her lips and put her phone back into her pocket resentfully. "Do you guys have to be so careful? Isn't it better to install Wi-Fi so that you guys know who's online? This is the rule. If there's Wi-Fi at the dinner party, everyone will look down at their phones. Who will chat? Vladimir seemed to understand, but he moved his fingers and confessed to Gunyenji, actually, I want to go online too. Gunyenji. She followed Vladimir to the side hall and lifted the curtain to go in. Sure enough, she saw little Demi and his mother inside. His mother was wearing a burgundy fishtail dress. Her figure was exaggerated and as alluring as a ripe peach. Gunyenji was a woman and her figure was also very impressive. However, she couldn't help glancing at little Demi's mother a few more times. Little Demi's mother enjoyed Gunyenji's secretly envious gaze. She smiled and said in broken English, "Your name is serious, right? I haven't thanked you yet." Gunyenji quickly said, "It was nothing. You're welcome." "It wasn't anything," little Demi's mother said seriously. "You risked your life to save my little Demi. Do you know who those two people were? They could have killed you in minutes." Gunyenji really didn't know the true identities of those two people when she saved them. She thought they were human traffickers. However, she didn't want to explain any more. She smiled and said, "As long as little Demi is fine." When little Demi heard his name, he looked up at her with a smile and tugged at the corner of her dress. "Gunyenji," she bent down and said in very slow English, "Little Demi, do you have something to say?" Little Demi mumbled a string of words in Russian, then ran behind the sofa and carried out a little puppy. He held it in his hands and brought it to Gunyenji. Vladimir translated for him. Little Demi said thank you for saving him. He wants to give this little corgi to you. He added, "This is his big corgi's baby. It's only a week old." Gunyenji's eyes were glued to the puppy without Vladimir translating. "See, the famous corgi." Just looking at its 5-centimeter long short legs was enough to melt people's hearts. It had a big head, a chubby little body, a black and white panda color and 4 short legs. It looked like it could cosplay as a panda cub with dark circles under its eyes. Gunyenji took it lovingly and said repeatedly, "Thank you. Thank you, little Demi. I like it very much." She hugged the corgi puppy in her arms and rubbed her face against its soft fur. Her love for it was obvious. Little Demi smiled when he saw how much Gunyenji liked his gift. He tugged at the corner of Gunyenji's dress and mumbled a string of Russian to her. Vladimir translated them one by one. So he was telling Gunyenji how to raise a corgi. Gunyenji listened very carefully and asked a few questions from time to time. The two of them talked with great interest, and little Demi became happier and happier. In the end, he even hugged Gunyenji before being taken away by his mother. They couldn't stay here for long. As she watched the mother and son disappear, Gunyenji suddenly asked Vladimir, "Don't tell me tonight's dinner is to give little Demi a chance to give me a corgi?" Vladimir raised his eyebrows. "Serious, you're too smart. If you continue to be smart, I think I'll be reluctant to let you leave us." Sure. As long as you give me red packets every day, I'll stay here and not leave." Gunyenji's mind raced and she pretended to want to stay. Vladimir was actually just joking. Seeing that Gunyenji was handling it so easily, he smiled and didn't continue asking. At that moment, his walkie-talkie rang. Someone called him over to deal with an emergency. He was worried about Gunyenji, so he called the driver in to accompany her. Gunyenji. After Vladimir left, Gunyenji asked the driver with a headache, "Where were you just now? I wanted to talk to you but I couldn't find you." The middle-aged driver held the vodka in his hand and the bread with caviar in his hand. He said happily, "I'm on duty outside. Did you miss me? Am I serious?" "Yes, I missed you. I missed your red packet," Gunyenji said with a smile as she stroked the little corgi in her arms. The driver made a face. "Talking about red packets hurts our relationship. Let's talk about our relationship." "Talking about red packets hurts our relationship. I won't fall for your trick." Gunyenji giggled and continued to joke with the driver. The two of them chatted and sat down in the side hall. The driver looked at the puppy in her arms and sized it up for a while. He said, "It's a famous breed dog. Take good care of it." Gunyenji didn't know much about dog breeds, but the little corgi was so cute. Whether it was a famous breed or not, she had to take good care of it. The puppy in her arms was quiet for a while before it began to bark softly. The furry paws on its short legs scratched Gunyenji's palm a few times, then it looked up at her and barked softly again. "What's wrong?" Gunyenji tilted her head to look at the little corgi. "What do you want?" "It's hungry." The driver took a bite of caviar bread. "There's milk over there. I'll go get it, a few bottles of goat's milk." Gunyenji. Not long after the driver left, Gunyenji's phone vibrated. Her heart skipped a beat. A call had come in. Because she was attending the banquet, she had set her phone to vibrate so that it wouldn't be rude if her phone suddenly rang. But just now, she clearly remembered that there was no signal on her phone at all. It was like being on a plane 10,000 meters in the sky. Vladimir had also said that all signals were blocked here. How could she make a call now? Gu Nianji quickly took out her phone and swiped it open. It was a very unfamiliar number. She stared at it for a while but still picked up the call. Hello? The person on the other end seemed to pause for a moment, then a very fluent Mandarin voice came from the phone. Excuse me, are you Gu Nianji? The voice was very low, very textured, and very dignified. It sounded a little old. Gu Nianji was filled with respect and quickly asked, Yes. May I ask who you are? The person quickly said, I'm He Jichu's father. I need your help with something urgent. Gu Nianji's eyes widened in shock. Who are you? Professor He's father? If you don't believe me, you can turn on the video call. The person on the other end seemed to be impatient. I don't have time to waste with you. Ijichu suddenly acted up and is in danger. Can you help save him this once? Gu Nianji suddenly stood up. What did you say? Professor, he acted up? Is he in danger? Where is he? This was the second chapter of today's update, chapter 1240, Giving a Big Gift. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. My dear friends are so anxious. Chapter 1251. He's in the professor's building at Imperial Capital University. He Qingjian's voice was steady and powerful. Gu Nianji calmed down a lot. Some people had the ability to keep their word. But I'm in Russia. Even if I fly back immediately, it won't do. Gu Nianji felt as if a basin of ice water had been poured over her. She felt a chill run down her spine. You're in Russia? He Qingjian was also stunned. He began to panic and his expression darkened. Why did you go to Russia? Weren't you by Jichu's side? However, this wasn't the time to pursue responsibility. He Qingjian's mind raced and he immediately said, Then can you help find someone to send Jichu to the hospital? Find a doctor who specializes in treating you. I remember Jichu saying. Gu Nianji immediately thought of Chen Lai. In her hurry, she didn't carefully consider why He Qingjian insisted on letting the doctor who treated her save He Jichu. She just felt that this idea couldn't be better. He Jichu was a cautious person and paid attention to his privacy. Chen Lai was tight-lipped and wouldn't speak carelessly. She quickly said, Okay, I'll call Dr. Chen right now. Please wait a moment. She then started to dial Chen Lai's phone. However, after dialing for a long time, she couldn't get through. She recalled what Vladimir had said about blocking all signals here and felt that something was wrong. She switched back to He Qingjian's number and found that he was still online. The call hadn't been hung up. Mr. He, I can't get through here. May I ask how you? Before Gu Nianji could finish her question, He Qingjian seemed to understand her question and immediately said, I'll transfer the call for you. You can dial the number first. Gu Nianji, although she had many doubts, she still dialed Chen Lai's number for He Jichu's sake. After a while, the sound of Chen Lai picking up the phone came from the other end. Gu Nianji sighed softly. Nianji? Why are you calling me at this time? Chen Lai looked at his watch. It was already midnight. Gu Nianji hadn't thought of the jet lag for a moment. She said embarrassedly, Brother Chen, sorry to disturb you. It's like this. I just found out that Professor He has an acute illness and I heard he's unconscious. Can you go to the B University professor's building immediately and take him to the hospital for treatment? Chen Lai was a doctor with a parental heart. He immediately said, Is it serious? Should we send an ambulance? Gu Nianji nodded. I still have to. I don't know how serious it is, but Professor He's father just called me. He wants me to save him. She then gave Chen Lai the address of Professor He Jichu's building and the password to open the door. She used to go in and out of He Jichu's suite often, so she hoped that he hadn't changed the password. Chen Lai immediately called for his medical team, and the ambulance sped towards the B University professor's building. Because it was an ambulance and it was late at night in the imperial capital, their journey was smooth. It only took them 15 minutes to arrive at the B University professor's building from the Special Operations Forces headquarters. But for Gu Nianji and He Qingjian, it was the longest 15 minutes. Gu Nianji had been holding her phone the whole time, so she didn't even notice that Vladimir and the driver had arrived. The puppy little corgi looked at the milk bottle in the middle-aged driver's hand and howled. It kept using its short legs to reach for it. The middle-aged driver stretched out his fan-like hand and pulled little corgi out of Gu Nianji's arms. She didn't even notice. Focus completely on the phone. Seeing this, Vladimir guarded in front of the curtain of the side hall, not letting anyone in. 15 minutes later, Qinlai's voice came through the phone. Professor He? Professor He? He used the password Gunyanji had given him to open Hijichu's door. He looked around and found him lying on the floor of the dining room. His teeth were clenched tightly and he had fainted. He was immediately given a routine checkup. Qinlai noticed that his heart was beating weaker and weaker. Without hesitation he took out the equipment and performed a strong cardiopulmonary resuscitation on Hijichu. It had to be said that if Qinlai had come a minute later, Hijichu's heart would have stopped beating and caused irreversible damage to his brain. At that time, even if he was saved, he would have become demented. To the proud Hijichu this was worse than death. Time passed by. Qinlai's superb medical skills, advanced equipment, and timely diagnosis and treatment finally saved Hijichu. His heartbeat gradually returned to normal. Not long after, Hijichu opened his eyes. Qinlai breathed a sigh of relief and ordered someone to lift Hijichu up. He said, Professor He, you fainted just now. Let's go to the hospital for a full examination now. Hijichu shook his head. His voice was still cold and clear, although it was a little weak. He said, No need. I'll go lie in bed for a while. I'll recover after sleeping. Hearing his words, Gunyanji and He Qingjian breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Brother Qin, let me talk to Professor He. Gunyanji was anxious to persuade Hijichu to go to the hospital. If he was sick he had to see a doctor. He couldn't hide his illness for fear of treatment. Qinlai had been wearing a Bluetooth headset to talk to Gunyanji. Hearing this he took out his phone and handed it to Hijichu. He said, Professor He, it's all thanks to Nyenji today. She called me to save you. Hijichu came back to his senses and remembered what had happened before he fainted. The last person he saw was his father, so why was it Gunyanji who called? Gunyanji was clearly in Moscow, Russia. He put the phone to his ear and Gunyanji's anxious voice came through. Professor He, you should go to the hospital with Brother Qin. If you don't want to go to a normal hospital, you can go to Brother Qin's. Professor He's eyes revealed a trace of nostalgia. Perhaps it was because sick people were always a little fragile, and his disguise had a crack. Hijichu said softly, Actually, I'm fine now that I'm awake. It was an accident just now. Of course being sick is an accident. Is it normal? Gunyanji was impatient. Hurry up and go to the hospital. It wasn't easy for me to find someone to save you. Don't make me regret saving you. The tone of her voice. Hijichu couldn't help but laugh. After a while he replied gently. I'll go to the hospital with Qinlai. He then said, Don't worry. Have fun in Moscow. I'll call you tomorrow. Gunyanji nodded. Even if you don't call, I'll call back. Qinlai ordered someone to bring a stretcher over and put Hijichu on it to take him away. Nyenji, let's get in the car. Qinlai continued to talk to Gunyanji. He wanted to tease her about her huge engagement with Wuxia, but he realized that he couldn't get through to her. This girl is so quick to burn the bridge after crossing it. Qinlai pursed his lips and dialed Gunyanji's number back. It showed that the number you dialed was not in the service area. Qinlai, Gunyanji realized that the phone had also been disconnected. When she dialed back, it was the same as when she couldn't find a signal earlier. She switched back to He Qingjian's number, only to find that his phone had also been disconnected. She dialed again but it also didn't get through. Gunyanji, Vladimir walked over and looked at Gunyanji in confusion. Were you on the phone just now? Yes. Gunyanji kept pressing on her phone, trying to check her call history with He Qingjian. A friend has an acute illness and just got a doctor to save him. Oh. The middle-aged driver hugged the short-legged little corgi with one hand and fed it goat milk with the other. He asked in confusion. But how did you get through? They all knew that the signal was blocked here today. If they wanted to make a call, they had to use a landline. Gunyanji spread her hands and said with a smile, I don't know either. I was suddenly able to get through. Maybe your shielding technology isn't good enough, or maybe my friend was just lucky. This explanation wasn't impossible, but it was too much of a coincidence. Vladimir suspected that the Wuxia Empire's Special Operations Forces had some special way to bypass the signal shield. The KGB also had this kind of technology, but only a few people at the highest levels could use it. This was because to do this, the phone needed to be specially made, and it also needed the cooperation of a team to bypass the shield. Gunyanji wasn't a member of the Special Operations Forces, so how would she know how to use it? However, when she thought about how she had just gotten engaged to Huo Xiaoheng, she felt relieved. It shouldn't be surprising for the fiancé of the commander of the Special Operations Forces to use this method. Vladimir found the reason for Gu Nianji's actions himself. He smiled and said, "Your friend is really lucky. He can go buy a lottery ticket now." "He doesn't need to buy a lottery ticket. He has plenty of money." Gu Nianji smiled and blinked. She took the little corgi puppy and the bottle from the middle-aged driver and continued to feed it. When Huo Xiaoheng lifted the curtain and walked in, he saw Gu Nianji holding something in her arms and holding a bottle in her other hand. She was feeding it like a baby. Her expression was focused and her posture was gentle. Huo Xiaoheng couldn't help thinking that if it were his and her child, he curled his lips and walked over happily. When he saw that it was only a puppy in Gu Nianji's arms, he frowned in disdain. Where did this puppy come from? Or is it a corgi? Huo Xiaoheng saw the iconic short legs at a glance. Yes, it's a gift from someone. Isn't it cute? Gu Nianji knew that Hijichu had been saved, so she was in a good mood. She held up the little corgi for Huo Xiaoheng to see. Huo Xiaoheng, this was the third update of the day, Chapter 1241. You're lucky. Good night, my dears. Chapter 1252. A gift for you? Huo Xiaoheng looked around quickly. Who gave it to you? So someone had given Gu Nianji a corgi puppy in the Kremlin less than half an hour after he left? Huo Xiaoheng's eyes narrowed. To be able to use President Pushkin to send Huo Xiaoheng away just to get close to Gu Nianji and give her a corgi puppy, this person was basically on the verge of appearing. Gu Nianji smiled and said, "Guess." Huo Xiaoheng immediately replied, "It's little Dimi?" Gu Nianji? No way. When Huo Xiaoheng came over, little Dimi and his mother had already left. How did he guess that it was someone who wasn't even present? Gu Nianji's sudden stiff expression confirmed Huo Xiaoheng's guess. He reached out and picked up the puppy which had just opened its eyes. He looked at it calmly and said, "It's only been a few days since it was born, right?" "I heard it's been more than a week." Gu Nianji pursed her lips and was still puzzled. "How did you know little Dimi gave it to me? Did someone tell you?" Gu Nianji's gaze fell on Vladimir, who was standing next to Huo Xiaoheng. The second in command of the KGB quickly shook his head. No, I swear I never said anything to Major General Hua." The middle-aged driver also waved his hand. "I've been feeding the puppy with you here the whole time. I didn't have the time or place to commit the crime." "Commit the crime?" The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. Huo Xiaoheng smiled and said leisurely, "It's not hard to guess. Who would be so important as to ask President Pushkin to help him send me away?" "Gu Nianji," she quickly beamed and shook Huo Xiaoheng's arm. "I knew Major General Hua was the smartest." "Mua." She pursed her lips and kissed Huo Xiaoheng, then reached out to ask for the little corgi puppy back. Huo Xiaoheng was still holding the poor puppy. He swung it in the air twice and said, "Such a small dog. It hasn't been trained yet, right?" Gu Nianji nodded. "Little Dimi said that he has to grow up a little more. He can only start training after he's 1 month old." Huo Xiaoheng pinched little corgi's chubby little legs and said calmly, "Okay, leave it to me. I'll get someone to train it before raising it for you." "Ah, you want to help me train Aku?" Gu Nianji's eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" "Yeah." Huo Xiaoheng responded and glanced sideways at Gu Nianji. "Aku?" "Yes, that's the name I gave it." Gu Nianji smiled. "If it's a little bitch, it'll be called Aku, the Ku from the slanting jade. But it was a little male dog, so let's call it Aku. Corgi's corgi." Huo Xiaoheng smirked. "You really know how to take advantage of the situation. All right, give it back to me first. I'll take care of it for a few days and send it to you for training when I return to China." Gu Nianji couldn't bear to part with the cute, short-legged Aku. Huo Xiaoheng's expression was indifferent. He still held onto the corgi puppy and said, "I'm free for the next 2 weeks. I want to take you out to play. It's not convenient to bring a puppy with you." "Ah, you want to take me out to play?" Gu Nianji was excited. She grabbed Huo Xiaoheng's arm and wanted to jump on him. "Really? Really? You really want to take me out to play?" "Yes." Huo Xiaoheng handed the corgi puppy to Gu Nianji. "Do you still want to take it with you? We'll go on a trip to Siberia." No. It's only been a week old, so it's not suitable for travel." Gu Nianji still felt sorry for her little Aku and quickly said, "Then what should we do? Who's going to take it? How about this? I'll get someone to send it back to China in advance." Huo Xiaoheng frowned slightly. "This puppy is too young and needs to be vaccinated. Don't hold it all the time." Yes. No problem." Gu Nianji clasped her hands together at the little corgi and said cutely, Papa and Mama have something to do and have to go out. Aku, you have to be good. The little corgi let out a loud woof, as if it was very angry. Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji's heart ached terribly. She quickly reassured it and watched as Hua Xiaoheng carried the puppy out. The middle-aged driver watched from the side with a smile. After Hua Xiaoheng left, he nudged Vladimir, who was standing next to him, with his elbow and said, Impressive. You got rid of an opponent without any bloodshed. Is this the first day you heard about Major General Hua? Vladimir kicked him disdainfully. Hurry up and go back to prepare. I'm afraid we'll have to go on a trip with them for the next 2 weeks. Hua Xiaoheng carried the little corgi to the Kremlin and made a phone call. Not long after, the Huaxia Empire's embassy in Moscow sent a military officer over and took the little corgi from Hua Xiaoheng. Have any of you returned to China recently? If so, help me bring this corgi back and send it to Colonel Yin Shixiang of the Special Operations Forces, Hua Xiaoheng ordered. Yes, sir. That person was actually Hua Xiaoheng's subordinate. He quickly stood at attention and saluted. Then he respectfully took the puppy from Hua Xiaoheng's hands and stroked its fur. He even purred at the puppy as if he was doting and happy. He happily carried the puppy and turned around to leave. Hua Xiaoheng, a grown man showing such a girly expression to a little puppy was really degrading. Hua Xiaoheng instantly decided that if he had a son in the future, he would never let him raise a puppy. Even if he had to raise one, he would raise a majestic German shepherd. A day later, Yin Shixiang stood in his office with his hands behind his back. He stared at the little corgi in a small cardboard box. Poor little corgi. Its legs were too short and it used all its strength to stand up. After standing up with great difficulty, it tried its best to raise its head, wanting to see who the person in front of it was. Yin Shixiang successfully pressed the little corgi who had just stood up, down with one finger. He then called Hua Xiaoheng and said with a bitter expression, Major General Hua, what do you mean by this? Then, out of the blue, a puppy from the city of Moscow in Russia came to him. Even though it was a very cute corgi, it was still a dog. Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, I don't mean anything. It's not for you. He then said, I have a mission for you. Yes, sir. Yin Shixiang quickly stood up and became serious. Please speak. Send this corgi to the professional dog training department and train it like a military dog. What? Yin Shixiang cried out involuntarily. Short-legged corgi like a military dog? Major General Hua, how did this corgi offend you? You want to do this to it? Hua Xiaoheng was impatient. Just do it. Stop talking so much nonsense. Don't you need to pay for international calls? Don't waste the department's funds by nagging. He hung up the phone. Yin Shixiang stared at the ringing phone, then looked at the little corgi that still didn't know what kind of fate it was facing. He wiped his tears and carried the cardboard box to look for a colleague who specialized in dog training. This was probably the first little corgi in the world that had been trained as a military dog since it was young. Gu Nianji was also on the phone at this time. When she woke up in the morning, the first call she made was to Chen Lai's office. May I ask if Brother Chen is there? Gu Nianji asked with a smile after the call connected. Chen Lai picked up the phone and sneered. Nianji, aren't you burning bridges? Gu Nianji, you asked me to save your people yesterday and immediately hung up the phone. And you still say you're not burning bridges? Chen Lai pretended to be angry. Brother Chen, I'm very angry. The consequences will be very serious. Gu Nianji quickly explained, I didn't hang up on you yesterday. The signal there wasn't good yesterday. I finally got through to you, but it didn't take long before I couldn't get through again. Chen Lai nodded. I was just joking. Don't be nervous. Gu Nianji smiled and continued to ask, Brother Chen, how is Professor He? Chen Lai knew that Gu Nianji must have called at this time to ask about He Jichu's condition. He looked at the medical record and said, everything is normal but his emotions are a little unstable. This is what happens when he's anxious and angry. His heart is a little weak but it's not a big deal. He just needs to rest well. I heard that he has medicine with him, but he hasn't taken it much recently. Gu Nianji breathed a sigh of relief. That's great. I was really scared yesterday. Fortunately, Brother Chen was here. Brother Chen, I'll treat you to dinner when we get back. What dinner? I saved your people, and you're only treating me to dinner? Chen Lai snorted. You're so famous in Moscow. You should at least treat me to 2 meals. Gu Nianji burst out laughing. No problem, even 3 meals is no problem. Chen Lai also laughed. He rubbed his bald head and said with emotion, Congratulations, Nianji. You and Major General Hua have finally seen the light. Congratulations. Qinlai was one of the few people who knew that Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were actually married. However, because Gu Nianji extremely disliked Hua Xiaoheng at that time, she was almost forced to sign a marriage contract with Hua Xiaoheng. Qinlai could imagine how much effort Hua Xiaoheng had put in to achieve this result. The relationship between two people could only come to fruition if both sides put in the effort. If only one party worked hard, it wouldn't go far. For example, Gu Nianji kept wanting to break up at that time. If Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to make it up, then the two of them would definitely drift apart and eventually become strangers. Gu Nianji was also very emotional. She looked at the big diamond ring on her finger and smiled. Yes, thank you, Brother Qin. I also thank you on behalf of Major General Hua. Oh, you're showing off Mrs. Hua so quickly. Qinlai laughed at her, then asked, do you want to talk to Professor He? Gu Nianji quickly nodded. Is it convenient? Professor He is resting, then forget it. No. He's standing in front of me, staring at my phone like a tiger watching its prey. Qinlai said faintly, then handed the phone to He Zhichu. He Zhichu was wearing Qinlai's hospital gown. He was still as handsome as ever. He didn't answer the phone. His shimmering almond-shaped eyes flashed and he said coldly, let Nianji call my phone. He then turned around and returned to his ward. Qinlai, F***CK. He's putting on airs. They're all masters. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1242, We're all masters. The second update was at 1 p.m. and the third update was at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1253. Gu Nianji heard He Zhichu's voice on the phone and finally confirmed that he was fine. She was in a good mood and immediately dialed He Zhichu's number. He Zhichu's phone rang before he could return to his room. You can't hear my voice, so you're afraid of blurting out your name. It was as if I was certain that I would meet you, as if we had exchanged eyes before, as if I had seen you somewhere before. The long and sorrowful prelude sounded, and a man's low voice sang softly as if fate was knocking on the door. Qinlai heard He Zhichu's ringtone and couldn't help but look up at him. Was this Gu Nianji's exclusive ringtone? He Zhichu unlocked his phone and closed the door. With one hand in his trouser pocket and the other holding his phone, He Zhichu walked to the window and looked at the sunlight outside. Nianji, thank you for saving me. Gu Nianji laughed. Professor He, are you feeling better? You're too polite. How many times have you saved me? I only saved you once. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to save you. He Zhichu, I'm fine. By the way, how did you know I was sick? He Zhichu pulled down the curtains and leaned against the windowsill as he asked with a smile. Your father called me. Gu Nianji said without hesitation. Professor He, your father treats you so well. I can feel that he really loves you. When he saw that you were sick, he was so worried that he even found my number. He Zhichu's heart sank. My father called you? So before he fainted, he really did see his father's video, and it wasn't an illusion. When he had just woken up yesterday, he had his doubts. He clearly remembered seeing his father, but why was it Gu Nianji who called Qinlai to save him? Yesterday he was too anxious and didn't have time to speak. He had to get to the bottom of this today. He Zhichu coughed lightly and asked, My father? Are you sure it was my father? He said yes, and he even showed me the video of you fainting. He really wanted me to help save you. Although I didn't see what he looked like, I didn't think his voice was fake. It was your father. His tone couldn't lie. Even if he was a liar who had his own difficulties. Gu Nianji thought to herself indulgently. That man had saved Professor He and given her a chance to save Professor He. Gu Nianji was very grateful to him. He Zhichu rubbed his forehead speechlessly. Okay, I got it. Nianji, congratulations. Gu Nianji, after a while, she smiled. Thank you, Professor He. Hua Xiaoheng is quite considerate. He Zhichu said lightly, the engagement ceremony I gave you was worthy of your status. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him get away with it so easily. Hua Xiao must have been very considerate to have received Professor He's approval. Gu Nianji played along with He Zhichu's tone, not wanting to make him angry. Qinlai had said that He Zhichu's relapse this time was due to anger. Gu Nianji didn't want him to be angered again. He Zhichu nodded. When do you plan to get married? Gu Nianji really hadn't thought about this problem. She and Hua Xiaoheng had already gotten their marriage certificate, so these people were probably asking when the wedding would be held. Because Russian President Vladimir Putin had already said that he would be a witness, Their wedding probably couldn't be decided by themselves anymore. Gu Nianji said tactfully, "This question depends on what Major General Hua says. I have to discuss it with him." "You'll listen to him?" He Jichu sneered disapprovingly. "Nianji, this is your wedding. There's only one main character at the wedding, and that's the bride. Don't put the cart before the horse." Gu Nianji felt a little guilty and chuckled. "I want to, but considering our witness, I can probably only be one of the main characters." Hijichu shook his head and walked back to the hospital bed to sit down. He poured himself a glass of water and said, "No matter how high the status of the witness is, he can't surpass the bride's limelight. Nianji, I'll take you down the red carpet when the time comes, okay?" Gu Nianji didn't have a father, so Hijichu wanted to be her family member, lead her down the red carpet, and then hand her over to Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji was so touched that her voice choked. "Professor He, are you really willing to take me down the red carpet?" Although there was still no sign of the wedding, when she thought of Professor He, whom she respected the most and who was like family to her, leading her down the red carpet, she felt that even if she didn't have a father, she wouldn't have any regrets. Hijichu looked ahead indifferently, his shimmering almond-shaped eyes devoid of emotion. "Of course. Otherwise, why would I take the initiative to bring it up? Then I'll remember it. When the time comes, Professor He, don't go back on your word." Gu Nianji smiled and made an agreement with Hijichu. The two of them chatted for a while before Qinlai knocked on the door. "Hijichu, it's time to take your medicine. After that, you'll go to bed. I'm going to disconnect the internet." "Hijichu," Gu Nianji heard Qinlai's voice and quickly said, "Then I'll hang up. Professor He, rest well and recover as soon as possible. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I still have a lot to discuss with Professor He." The Angel in the World Foundation's lawsuit was about to be concluded, and the date of her father's death was about to come to an end. In 2 weeks she would receive all of the Gu family's assets. When that time came, she would see if there were any new clues about her father. After calling Hijichu, Gu Nianji called Machichi again. Machichi was just about to take a nap. When she saw that it was Gu Nianji's call, she immediately picked it up and shouted, "Nianji, you finally called. TSK, our identities are really different now. It's really not easy to talk to you for a while." Gu Nianji spat. "Chichi, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" "I did it on purpose." Machichi giggled. "Hurry up and tell me the truth. What was Major General Hua's proposal about? Did he really propose in front of that unknown warrior's grave?" Gu Nianji nodded. "Yes, it was there. Damn. That's so cool." Machichi circled the room excitedly. "I'm afraid only someone like Major General Hua would have such creativity. Gimmicks like stars, beaches, and drones dropping rings are nothing compared to this." Gu Nianji burst out laughing. "Chichi, don't make enemies for me. What did the drones do to you?" Machichi chuckled. "Actually, I was mocking Big Xiong. When he proposed to me it was really romantic, but because it was too romantic, it was a little arrogant and not meaningful enough. Chichi, don't push your luck." Gu Nianji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's like a city is under siege. The people in the city want to go out and the people outside the city want to come in. Hey, this is used to describe marriage. How can you use it so carelessly? Machichi corrected her and asked her, "When are you coming back? When do you plan to hold the wedding?" "I've already said that if I'm not married by then I'll be your bridesmaid." Bridesmaids were usually unmarried women. Of course, there were also married women depending on the situation. "No problem. You'll definitely be my bridesmaid." Gu Nianji thought about contacting her roommates from undergrad to see if they were willing to be her bridesmaids. That would be it. Machichi blew her a kiss in satisfaction. "Then when are you coming back? I haven't seen you in a long time. I miss you. Soon. There's still 2 weeks." Gu Nianji giggled and exchanged a few more words with her before putting down the phone. Just as she was about to rest for a while, her phone rang instead. She looked at the caller and saw that it was actually Song Jining. She quickly swiped open her phone and said with a blush, "Miss Song, you haven't taken a nap yet?" Song Jining smiled brightly and said gently, "Nianji, congratulations on your engagement. It seems that my son is quite capable. He was able to tie down a genius girl." "Gu Nianji, since you're already engaged, the wedding schedule should be put on the table." Song Jining reminded her. "I'll remind Xiaoheng about this. Nianji, you just have to dress up nicely and be responsible for being beautiful on your wedding day." Gu Nianji's heart warmed and she nodded heavily. "I'll listen to Miss Song." "Oh, you're still calling me Miss Song like Xiaoheng." Song Jining chuckled. "Shouldn't you change the way you address me?" "Gu Nianji, Miss Song, you're so unkind. You actually tricked Gu Nianji, who doesn't understand traditional etiquette. Gu Nianji almost fell for her trick. Just then Hua Xiaoheng pushed the door open and came in. Gu Nianji swallowed the word "mom." "Who are you calling?" Hua Xiaoheng said as he took out his suitcase and began to pack his things. "Miss Song, do you want to talk to her?" "No need. We'll see her soon. Why would I call?" Hua Xiaoheng didn't think much of it and put a few sets of casual clothes into his suitcase. "We'll see her soon? Miss Song is also in Moscow?" Gu Nianji was very surprised. "Where do you live? Why don't we go visit them?" Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. "Miss Song isn't in Moscow. Then where is she? How are we going to see her?" Gu Nianji was even more confused. "Miss Song is doing scientific tests in Tunguska, Siberia. We're going to Siberia for a trip so we can see her on the way." "Tunguska, Siberia?" Gu Nianji frowned. "Why does this place sound so familiar?" "Yes. The Tunguska explosion from more than 100 years ago. Are you familiar with it?" Hua Xiaoheng told her about it and helped her organize her suitcase. This was the second watch of the day, chapter 1243, I Want to Take You Down the Red Carpet. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Moi. Chapter 1254. The Tunguska explosion? Oh, I was wondering why this place sounded so familiar. So it's because of this. Gu Nianji took out her phone and searched. There were a lot of related news and explanations on the internet, but most of them were from the same article, so they seemed to be similar. An explosion more than 100 years ago was as powerful as 20 million tons of TNT. That's amazing. There weren't even atomic bombs at that time. How could there be such a powerful explosion? Gu Nianji clicked her tongue. Tens of millions of trees within more than 2,000 square kilometers were burned and charred. The way they fell was very strange. They were all pointing to a center, just like the crop circles of later generations. Gu Nianji saw this and exclaimed, "Didn't crop circles prove to be man-made and not a natural phenomenon? The ancestors of forgery in the modern sense were actually the British. Because they were the first country to industrialize. With the emergence of industrialization, large-scale modern counterfeiting also appeared. For example, the crop circles that were closely related to the first industrial revolution first appeared at that time. Unfortunately, under the malicious propaganda of the West, the Wuxia Empire, which had fallen from its peak and risen again, became the birthplace of counterfeiting." Hua Xiaoheng put all the clothes back into the box and said as he locked it, "If the Tunguska explosion was man-made, what would it be like?" "That's unlikely, right?" Gu Nianji continued reading and said in surprise, "It was actually felt in all of Europe and parts of Asia at that time. Fortunately, it was in the inaccessible Tunguska region of Siberia. If it had been in another place with more people, it would have been much worse." "There are so many theories about the specific cause?" Gu Nianji read the information she had seen to Hua Xiaoheng. "Some people think it was a comet impact. Yes, this is the common view in academia now. Some people still think it was an alien spacecraft impact. Some people think it was a small black hole that was passing through the blue planet at that time. TSK, this imagination. Are you sure it's not a science fiction writer but a scientist?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled and turned around. "Then you should discuss this topic with Miss Song. Miss Song is too high-end. I'm only worthy of reading these popular science books." Gu Nianji laughed. "Yes, there's also a creative explanation here. It's called antimatter. The protons and antiprotons collided. Bang. Everything will vanish into thin air. It's so similar to the ashes to ashes, dust to dust, recorded in the Bible." Hua Xiaoheng stood up and turned around. "Look, isn't this related to particle physics?" "You mean antimatter?" Gu Nianji frowned. "If it really was antimatter, then it really could have caused such great damage." It was said that when half a gram of iron and half a gram of anti-iron collided, the power of the explosion was equivalent to the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Well, if that's the case, the equivalent of the Tunguska explosion is equivalent to 1,000 atomic bombs, which is the power of 500 grams of iron colliding. Gu Nianji frowned again. "But antimatter can't exist in its natural state." "Yes, antimatter can't exist in nature unless it's in a specific laboratory environment, or if there's radioactive decay in nuclear research, or if insignificant and fleeting antimatter is observed in cosmic rays." Hua Xiaoheng seemed to be very familiar with this point. He said, "Even if antimatter is created in a laboratory, it can only appear for a very short period of time, because it will inevitably come into contact with the laboratory utensils and be annihilated. When matter and antimatter collide, the energy that can erupt is beyond your imagination. In front of it, even nuclear weapons are not enough. Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng suspiciously. Why do you seem to have studied this thing? Don't tell me it's a bedtime story that Miss Song told you when you were young when she coaxed you to sleep. Of course not. Miss Song's biological son is called scientific research. I'm just a gift from her for topping up her phone bill. Hua Xiaoheng was rarely humorous. Gu Nianji's heart ached when she heard this. She put down her phone and walked over to hug Hua Xiaoheng's waist. She leaned her head against his chest and said, I'll tell you bedtime stories in the future. Hua Xiaoheng. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. He said hoarsely, Are you stupid? If you sleep with me, I'll give you time to tell stories? Gu Nianji, all the sadness and tenderness in her heart were completely destroyed by him. Gu Nianji pushed him away expressionlessly and tried to change the topic. Are you so concerned about antimatter research because it has something to do with the military's weapons research? Hua Xiaoheng smiled without saying anything. He picked up their suitcases. Let's go. I still have to buy you some coats to keep out the cold before we go to Siberia. Siberia was a vast area in the northwest of Russia. It was more than 10 million square kilometers from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean, from the Arctic Ocean to Huk, and even part of it bordered the Huaxia Empire. Siberia's climate was a subfrigid coniferous forest climate. It was very cold and there were at least 7 months below zero every year. It was early May, so it was slightly warmer. However, for Gu Nianji, who had grown up in Sea City in the south, it was still a very cold winter. The only thicker clothes she had brought were windbreakers, which were not enough to withstand the cold air currents of Siberia. Gu Nianji followed Hua Xiaoheng out of the hotel and immediately saw the familiar jeep parked ostentatiously at the entrance of the hotel. The hairy second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, leaned against the car door. The driver poked his head out of the car window with a smile on his face and greeted them with a smile. Serious, where are you going? Vladimir and I will be your free driver and tour guide. We'll take you wherever you want to go. Gu Nianji, Hua Xiaoheng wasn't surprised at all. Therefore he didn't even call for a car. He just waited for the two of them to come to him. In Russia, with the KGB escorting them, he didn't have to worry about security himself. Thank you, KGB, thank you, President Pushin. Hua Xiaoheng opened the back door without hesitation and said, Then I'll be troubling you. Thank you for your hospitality. You're welcome, you're welcome. Sirius and I are friends. The middle-aged driver made a face at Gu Nianji. Come get in the car. Gu Nianji smiled and followed Hua Xiaoheng into the car. Vladimir's face darkened. Damn it. Why did he feel like he was being used by Hua Xiaoheng? After getting in the car, Vladimir's face darkened and he didn't say anything. The middle-aged driver didn't notice and chatted happily with Gu Nianji. Sirius, where are you going? First, we're going to buy some coats to keep out the cold, then we're going on a trip to Siberia. Right, Hua Xiaoheng? Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng grunted, his expression calm and natural. To buy a coat, Vladimir said sarcastically. Then let's go to Gumu. You're really going to Gumu? The middle-aged driver's eyes widened. That's the most luxurious place in Russia with the most luxury goods. Gumu. Gu Nianji looked down and checked on her phone. The full name is Gumu National Department Store. TSK, that's a really lame name. However, although the name was lame and lame, it was the most luxurious shopping mall in Moscow and even in the entire Russia. There was a security check when entering. All the luxury brands on Blue Planet had flagship stores there. Its scale was obvious. When Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng got out of the car, they were still shocked when they saw the security check at the door. Vladimir smiled strangely as he watched Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji walk into Gumu. He said, Let Major General Hua bleed a little. Let him use us. How did he use us? Weren't we spying on them? The middle-aged driver expressed his confusion. Vladimir's heart felt stifled. How could he have such a heartless subordinate? This was the third watch of the day, chapter 1244, My Bedtime Story with You. Good night, dearest. Chapter 1255. Hua Xiaoheng brought Gu Nianji to the security check at the entrance of the Gumu National Department Store. It was similar to the security check at the Huaxia Empire's train station. The main check here was for all kinds of bags. Gu Nianji only carried a small red Hermes Berlin bag that she carried with her. Inside was her wallet, phone, sunscreen, some change and a pack of disinfectant wipes. There were many people waiting in line for the security check, and the long line circled the entrance several times. Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to wait in line for the security check. He pondered for a moment, then took out his phone from his pocket and called a Swiss bank boss. Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng curiously. She didn't know what he said to the person on the phone because not long after, a tall and elegant woman rushed out of the Gumu department store. She didn't look young, but she had an elegant aura that made it impossible for people to notice her age. She looked around at the door and came to Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji's side. She smiled and said in English, "May I ask if you two are Lucas's friends?" The Swiss banker that Hua Xiaoheng had called was called Lucas. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and replied in English, "Yes, I'm Alex and this is serious. Do you know Lucas?" The woman waved her hand gracefully. "This way please. My name is Anna. I used to be Lucas's assistant but I was homesick so I returned to Russia to work." She led Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji around the long line of security checks and walked to the side door of the department store. In the jeep at the entrance, Vladimir and the middle-aged driver, who had been prepared to watch the show, widened their eyes and mouths. They were shocked by this turn of events. This. They went in just like that. No security check? And they were picked up by someone? The middle-aged driver was so excited that he almost jumped out of his seat. That woman looks so familiar. Vladimir took out his phone with a sullen expression. After connecting to the KGB's intelligence system, he looked up information about the Gumu National Department Store. Soon he saw the photo of the tall and elegant woman. Anna Ivanova, the CEO of the Gumu National Department Store. Vladimir gasped and punched the car window. When did Hua Xiaoheng get to know the CEO of Gumu? At the side door of the GUM National Department Store stood an armed guard. He wore a black beret and black Ray-Ban sunglasses. He was very tall, at least 2 meters tall, and his arms bulged like a giant's. Anna showed her name card to the guard. The guard was extremely shocked. He quickly stood at attention and saluted, saying, "So it's the C. Why did you come down personally? Just give us a call and we'll get someone to invite your 2 friends in." Anna nodded reservedly. "You have your own work to do. How can I trouble you? Work hard, lunch is on me." As she spoke, she gave the guard a lunch voucher. It was a lunch voucher for the management's exclusive restaurant. The denomination was very large, enough for 4 to 5 people to eat. The guard, who was as tall as a giant, looked at the lunch voucher and smiled contentedly. The corners of Gu Nianji's lips twitched. Hua Xiaoheng took out a pre-charged credit card and stuffed it into the guard's hand. He smiled and said, "Then dinner is on me." The guard looked at the amount marked on the credit card and immediately felt deep veneration. He saluted Hua Xiaoheng and said respectfully, "Sir, you're too kind but we can't accept it," because Anna was watching from the side and the CEO was here. If he still dared to accept bribes, he would lose his job. However, Anna raised her head and said, "Take it. Mr. Alex has good intentions. Remember to take care of him and his friends." "Don't worry." The guard immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and muttered something. Soon he called over 4 tall and burly guards with loaded guns and said, "These 2 are our department store's distinguished guests. Today their safety is in your hands." Anna nodded with a smile and explained to Hua Xiaoheng, "Our department store is like this for high-value customers. There are professional services and bodyguards accompanying them the entire time. You can shop without worry and don't have to worry about anything." In other words, there was no need to worry about thieves carelessly dropping things, or being targeted by some criminal gangs and becoming a fat sheep for these people. Gu Nianji was amazed by such thoughtful service. She had thought that they were special to them. However, after entering the store, she saw that there were many people like them. Many of them were Middle Eastern people in white or black robes, accompanied by armed guards. Of course, the Middle Eastern oil princes were rich and of course they cherished their lives the most. Immediately after, a blonde Russian shopping guide walked over with a very polite smile and said to Hua Xiaoheng, "I'm Lika. I'll take you shopping today. If you need anything, please let us know. We'll do our best to meet your needs." Anna said with satisfaction, "Lika, these 2 are my good friends. You must treat them well and show them the best service quality of our Gumu department store." "Don't worry, President. I won't let you 2 down." Lika made a promise to Anna. Anna was the CEO of this large department store, so it was impossible for her to keep Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji shopping. It was already a great favor for her to personally come down and lead them in. After Hua Xiaoheng shook hands with her and said goodbye, he held Gu Nianji's hand and leisurely strolled around Gumu department store. He said to the shopping guide Lika, "We want to buy a coat to keep out the cold. It's a woman's style. What do you recommend?" Lika asked carefully, "May I ask how low the temperature you need to withstand? We have all kinds of brands and all kinds of cold-resistant coats here. Although it's almost summer, there are still some stores that sell winter clothes. I'll check for you." Lika took out her handheld tablet and clicked on it. After a while she said, "This is the last week of Burberry's winter clothes. The season will change next week. Do you want to go take a look? I have to contact other brands to see if they still have winter clothes in stock. In addition, our Russian brand also has some winter clothes of good quality and design. However, I think this lady's figure is too good. I guess our Russian brand doesn't have the right size for her." She pursed her lips and smiled. Gunyanji also understood and felt that this shopping guide was really funny. She was just short of saying that the clothing sizes of Russian brands were relatively large, and Gunyanji's small body probably wouldn't be able to hold them. Hua Xiaoheng actually didn't have much time to shop for clothes. He looked at his watch and said, "Then let's go to Burberry and buy a few suitable ones. We're in a hurry." "Oh, I understand." The shopping guide Lika stopped looking for other brands and took them directly to Burberry's flagship store. After entering Burberry's flagship store, Gunyanji was immediately attracted by Burberry's iconic cashmere plaid scarf. Hua Xiaoheng saw that her gaze kept drifting to the cashmere plaid scarf, and thought about how Gunyanji had a lot of silk scarves, but not many thick cashmere scarves. Of course, that was because Gunyanji had never been to a really cold place. There was heating at home and at school in the winter, and there was a car to go in and out, so she didn't need too many thick cashmere scarves. However, since they were in Moscow, he might take Gunyanji on a trip to various places on Blue Planet in the future. Hua Xiaoheng felt that he should buy her some thick cashmere scarves. What if she needed them? She could wear them in different styles every day for the entire winter. Besides, the cashmere scarves and even cashmere coats supplied by Burberry in Moscow were thicker than the materials used in other places. Because it was colder here than in other places, it was worth stocking up. The products sold by a brand had to meet the living needs of the local residents in order to prosper for a long time. "Let's go look at the cashmere scarves over there. We'll need them when we go to Siberia." Hua Xiaoheng pulled Gunyanji directly to the counter where the cashmere scarves were kept. Gunyanji was immediately delighted. She thought happily that Hua Xiao had seen her sneaking glances at the cashmere scarves over there just now. Therefore, women had different levels of acceptance for different kinds of sweet words from men, but there was only one kind of sweet words that women liked. That was bye bye bye. Gunyanji smiled as she looked between the scarves, choosing the style and pattern that she liked. The pinkish-blue checkered scarves with light gray intervals looked clean and refreshing, like the Siberian winter sky, with light gray clouds and the light blue that could bring a storm at any time. The pinkish-white checkered scarves with bright red stripes were like flags fluttering in the heavy snow, looking valiant and heroic. The light green checkered squares had snow-white tassels. When she wiped them with her hand, they were as soft as water, but also extremely warm. There were also 7 or 8 other color combinations. Gunyanji was dazzled and couldn't help asking Hua Xiaoheng, "Which color looks the best?" Hua Xiaoheng glanced at them and asked the salesgirl next to him, "Which ones are this year's new models?" "These are all of them." The salesgirl pointed to the 7 or 8 colors of cashmere scarves in front of her. "Last year's old models have already entered the outlet. The flagship store is all new models." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Wrap these up. 2 of each. That way if Gunyanji's friend liked it, she could also give one as a gift." "Gunyanji, why do you need so many?" Gunyanji's face flushed red. She grabbed Hua Xiaoheng's arm and shook her head. "One is enough. If you like them, buy them all. It's not like you can't afford them." Hua Xiaoheng reminded her. "You're out to play, but don't you want to bring gifts for your friends? I think Ma Chichi will like these scarves too. Just take it as picking out a few for her." Gunyanji felt ashamed at his words. She really hadn't thought about Ma Chichi just now. She was completely immersed in the joy of a vacation alone with Hua Xiaoheng. She quickly said, "Then I'll pick out some small things." As she spoke, she picked out some leather gloves, wallets, and belts for men and women and paid with her card. Hua Xiaoheng paid for the scarves. The salesgirl happily wrapped 2 of each scarf and carried it behind Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng then took Gunyanji to look at coats. He took a fancy to a long maroon wool coat at first glance. It was a very slim military coat style and reached his knees. The quality of the wool inside was very good. It was warm to the touch like a natural temperature regulator. Not to mention 0 degrees Celsius, even minus 50 degrees Celsius wouldn't be a problem. The coat also had a wide military belt. Gunyanji came out of the fitting room wearing it. Her waist was thin and her chest was high. Her long hair draped over her shoulders. She was delicate and beautiful with a hint of the cruelty and abstinence of a soldier. Hua Xiaoheng's heart heated up when he saw it, and some unreliable scenes floated through his mind. For example, Gunyanji was lying on the bed wearing this coat. She was only wearing this coat, and when she opened the coat, there was nothing underneath. This was the first night watch of the day, chapter 1245, liking what you are on the inside. The second night watch was at 1 p.m. and the third night watch was at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1256. Gunyanji didn't know what Hua Xiaoheng was thinking. She smiled and spun a few times in front of Hua Xiaoheng. How is it? Does it look good? Of course it was very warm, but she was concerned about whether it looked good. If it didn't look good, she didn't want it no matter how warm it was. Hua Xiaoheng came back to his senses and said calmly, "Yes, it looks good." He then took out his black card and immediately paid for it. The shop assistant who paid for him smiled like a chrysanthemum and followed Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji with the shopping guide, Lika. Gunyanji said, "Hua Xiao, you should buy one too. Aren't you cold?" The Burberry shop assistant quickly said, "We also have a men's coat of the same style. It looks like a couple's outfit for the two of you." As she spoke, she brought over the men's wool military coat. Gunyanji liked it very much. Her eyes lit up when she held the coat to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng had a feeling that Gunyanji's little brain was thinking about something indescribable. He had just been indescribable, and now that Gunyanji was indescribable, Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. He nodded calmly and agreed to buy the coat, but refused to try it on for Gunyanji. Gunyanji pouted and followed behind him. Hua Xiaoheng pretended not to see her and turned around to buy two glossy black mink fur hats for the two of them. They were the kind that could cover half of their heads. They were almost identical to the black mink fur hats worn by the governors of the northeastern warlords in the old era. Then he bought a pair of leather pants with a cashmere lining to keep out the cold as much as possible. In the end he picked out two pairs of leather boots. The inner lining was made of soft, snow-white wool, and the outer lining was made of sturdy calf leather. It was fashionable and high-end, and it was very comfortable to wear. It was no problem for them to travel long distances. Seeing that it was almost time, Hua Xiaoheng didn't waste any more time. He said to Gunyanji, "Is there anything else you want to buy?" "No." Gunyanji looked at the various paper bags in the hands of the shopping guide and the guards and smiled with satisfaction. Only women who had gone shopping knew how fulfilling it felt to shop hard. The two of them spent an hour shopping and were personally escorted out of the department store by Anna. Vladimir looked at Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji's Burberry bags and couldn't help pulling a long face. He snorted and looked away. Gunyanji took out a pair of men's leather gloves and a box of belts she had just bought and stuffed them into Vladimir's hands. She smiled and said, "You have a gift too. Come on, smile." Vladimir looked down at the Burberry gift box in his hand. Although he wanted to pretend that he didn't care, the corners of his mouth still revealed his true thoughts. "Thank you, serious." He pretended to be reserved, then secretly took out his phone to take a picture and post it on WeChat. Vladimir KGB 2. A gift from a friend, smile. JPG. When the middle-aged driver received the same gift, his way of expressing his gratitude was much more straightforward. He let out an earth-shattering shout and then laughed wildly. "I have Burberry gloves and belts. Ah. When I get back, this bunch of brats will definitely envy me to death. Serious, thank you." As the middle-aged driver spoke, his huge body struggled up from the front seat. He turned around and leaned against the back of the seat, wanting to kiss Gunyanji's face. A kiss on the cheek to express gratitude. Hua Xiaoheng reached out and pushed him back without hesitation. "Drive well, that's the best way to thank me." Okay. The middle-aged driver couldn't resist Hua Xiaoheng's hand. He retracted his head resentfully, turned around, started the car, and left the entrance of Gu Mu's department store. Gunyanji took out her phone with a smile and began to interact with Vladimir on WeChat. She gave him a like first, then commented, "It's been hard on you these few days, Vladimir." Vladimir immediately replied, "It's not hard at all. It's to serve the people." Gunyanji. "How did you know that?" Vladimir rolled his eyes in the front seat and replied, "This is the purpose of the KGB." Gunyanji chuckled and replied, "Is that so? Whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it." Vladimir. Hua Xiaoheng glanced around the car and saw that Gunyanji was interacting with Vladimir. He ignored them. The middle-aged driver asked him, "Major General Hua, where are you guys going this time?" "To Tunguska in Siberia." Hua Xiaoheng turned around. You know how to get there, right? Oh, I don't know, the middle-aged driver replied honestly. But I have GPS. Just follow the directions. Tunguska in Siberia was directly east of Moscow, so they had to take the highway heading east. Although there were no highways along the way, these ordinary roads were built in the former Soviet Union. They were of very good quality and were no worse than the highways of today. And because there were few people along the way, these ordinary roads were similar to the highways in Europe and America. What was even more interesting was that there were no speed limits in many places, so they could drive very fast. The four of them quickly walked out of Moscow. They hadn't walked far when Huo Xiaoheng's phone suddenly rang. He picked up his phone and looked at it. It was actually his father, Huo Guanchen. He frowned but still picked up the phone and asked, "What's the matter?" "I'm on my way." Huo Guanchen was worried that it would affect his driving, so he quickly said, "It's like this. General Ji told me about you and Yanji and asked when we plan to hold the wedding." Huo Xiaoheng. He thought that General Ji had told him that he and Gun Yanji had already gotten their marriage certificate, but fortunately General Ji was still tight-lipped. He asked when the wedding would be held and didn't gossip much. Huo Xiaoheng frowned. "We'll talk about this later. I'm on my way now." "On your way? Where are you going?" Huo Guanchen was stunned. "Aren't you leading the team to participate in the International Special Forces competition in Moscow?" "It's none of my business now. I'm not in this area anyway. I won't steal the limelight and credit from others," Huo Xiaoheng said calmly. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." "Then why don't you return home early?" Huo Guanchen was very excited. "President Pushkin is going to be your witness, so you have to plan your wedding well. General Ji and Speaker Long have both said that your marriage has become an international event, and they will all do their part." He actually didn't say a single word of objection. Huo Xiaoheng's lips curled. It seemed that his father wasn't hopeless. At least he was in the category of a tactful person. "I'm taking Yanji to Siberia now." Huo Xiaoheng shook his head. "I can't return home for the time being." "Guanchen, is that Xiaoheng? Give me your phone." Huo Xuanong leaned on his walking stick and came downstairs with Luo Jialan's help. He happened to hear Huo Guanchen calling Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Guanchen wanted to reject Huo Xuanong, but Huo Xiaoheng was listening on the other end of the phone. Huo Guanchen didn't want Huo Xuanong to lose face in front of his juniors, so he could only reluctantly say to Huo Xiaoheng, "Your grandfather is here. He wants to say a few words to you." Huo Xiaoheng nodded. He wanted to make things clear so that his grandfather and father wouldn't think that he had acted first and reported later. Although he had indeed acted first and reported later. Huo Xuanong took the phone from Huo Guanchen and asked angrily, "Xiaoheng, why did you get engaged outside without the consent of your family? You have to know that without the blessing of your family, your marriage will never be happy." "So what if the Russian president is the witness? After he's done being the witness, he'll just leave and leave you alone to face this kind of marriage that doesn't match your family's background. Do you think he's being kind?" Huo Xiaoheng. After Huo Xuanong finished speaking, he saw that Huo Xiaoheng didn't refute him, so he felt even more confident. He slammed the walking stick in his hand on the ground twice and said confidently, "Fortunately, you only got engaged in private, so it doesn't count. Come back quickly and get your marriage certificate with Jialan. Then, when you prepare for the wedding, just let Jialan be the bride. The Russian president doesn't know what an Asian looks like at all. When the time comes, you'll wear a wedding dress with a veil and this matter will be over." Huo Xuanong even helped Huo Xiaoheng think of a way to fool the Russian president, Pushkin. Huo Guanchen was completely confused when he heard this. He thought that after he rejected him last time, the old master had already abandoned the unrealistic fantasy of letting Luo Jialan and Huo Xiaoheng fake marry, but he didn't expect him to still refuse to give up. The corners of Huo Xiaoheng's mouth twitched. It was getting more and more ridiculous. "Get your marriage certificate with Jialan? Who's Jialan?" "Huo Jialan, your former cousin, but she's no longer a member of the Huo family. You know, she wasn't your uncle's biological daughter to begin with, and now she's moved out of the Huo family's household register. She changed her surname to follow her mother's surname, Luo. Now she's called Luo Jialan." Huo Xuanong explained impatiently. This was the second watch of the day, Chapter 1246, Unrealistic Fantasies. At 8 p.m. the third watch. Moi. Chapter 1257. Luo Jialan held Huo Xuanong's hand and lowered her head deeply. She looked embarrassed, but her heart was pounding. Although Huo Xiaoheng was a stubborn person who often did things his own way and never listened to his parents' opinions at work, marriage was different. No matter how powerful a person was, marriage was an important matter that required the approval of the elders. Hua Xiaoheng was a soldier, so this was especially important. Luo Jialan was certain of this, so she dared to work hard on Hua Xuanong's side. Finally, she made him very dissatisfied with Gun Yanji and agreed to let her be a cover for Hua Xiaoheng's marriage. Moreover, Hua Xiaoheng hadn't been married for so many years and didn't have a girlfriend. Luo Jialan felt that Hua Xiaoheng must be very concerned about his family's opinion. This was all because his family's standards were too high. Ordinary people and ordinary family backgrounds were beneath them. That was why Hua Xiaoheng had not had a girlfriend for so many years. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. He supported his head with one hand and rested his elbow on the edge of the car window. "Grandfather, if you want to marry me, you have to go through a strict background check first. Do you think she can pass the background check?" "Why can't she pass?" Hua Xuanong's face darkened. "Do you think I don't know what a background check is? I've been in the Supreme Military Council for so many years, and I have my own connections. I will make sure she passes the background check." "Okay, then I'll guarantee that she won't pass the background check." Hua Xiaoheng didn't waste any more time. He hung up on Hua Xuanong and sent a message to Yin Shixiang. "Major General Hua, investigate Luo Jialan's, formerly Hua Jialan's, identity and background. Nothing can be missed from her birth to the present." When Yin Shixiang saw the message, he was stunned for a long time before he remembered that Hua Jialan was Hua Xiao's cousin. She was Hua Xiao's uncle's daughter. Of course, she was only an adopted daughter, not a biological daughter. Previously, because of Song Jinning's lawsuit, Yin Shixiang had some understanding of Luo Jialan's conduct, so of course he was very disdainful. Not only did he eat someone else's food, but he also abused someone else's family. That person was his elder, and because he was sick, he did not have the ability to protect himself. This kind of person with a bad character was spurned by many people at that time. Yin Shixiang immediately replied, "Yes, chief." Gun Yanji heard Hua Xiaoheng talking on the phone and asked in confusion, "Major General Hua, did Luo Jialan want to marry you? Who is Luo Jialan?" Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to hide it from Gun Yanji. Otherwise, he wouldn't have confronted her directly over the phone. He said calmly, "Hua Jialan changed her name. She moved out of my uncle's household register and took her mother's surname." Gun Yanji came back to her senses and was so agitated that her entire body trembled. Her eyes suddenly widened in anger. "She wants to marry you? Why? Daring to covet her man, was she looking for death?" Gun Yanji clenched her fists and her face tensed up. She said expressionlessly, "I think she forgot that Miss Song's lawsuit wasn't over yet. Song Jinning's lawsuit against Bai Jini would be followed by Hua Jialan's abuse case." However, Hua Jialan was quick to act and immediately followed grandfather Hua to Europe to relax with the Xie family. They were gone for more than a year and the case was temporarily shelved. Hua Xiaoheng patted her head and said with a smile, "We'll have to trouble our great lawyer Gu for the lawsuit." It also allowed Gun Yanji to vent her anger. Otherwise, anyone would dare to use the power of his muddle-headed elders to blackmail him. Did they really think that he, Hua Xiaoheng, wouldn't dare to touch grandfather Hua? Gun Yanji received Hua Xiaoheng's authorization and immediately said, "There are two plaintiffs in this lawsuit. One is my grandmother's estate fund, and they want to sue Luo Jialan for illegally occupying the Hua family's property. The other is Miss Song." Gun Yanji paused and said word by word, "I want to sue Luo Jialan for attempted murder on behalf of Miss Song." Abuse? Ah, the crime was too light. It wasn't enough to teach her a lesson that she would never forget. Objectively speaking, Luo Jialan's abuse of Song Jinning belonged to the category of domestic violence. According to the severity of the case, she could only be sentenced to 3 years at most. Moreover, because Song Jinning hadn't been abused to death, it was considered mental abuse, so it was very likely that she wouldn't even have to go to jail. However, it was different to sue her for attempted murder. The maximum penalty could be the death penalty. Gun Yanji had already felt that suing Luo Jialan for abuse was too easy on her. Now that Luo Jialan was unrepentant and even had the delusion of marrying Hua Xiaoheng to avoid being sued and pursued for money, she couldn't blame Gun Yanji for destroying her dreams. Although it was more difficult to sue Luo Jialan for attempted murder than to sue her for abuse, if it wasn't difficult, how could it show that Gun Yanji had a solid legal foundation? Gun Yanji smiled wickedly. Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips and looked at her with a fiery gaze. He loved Gun Yanji's energetic display of her talent the most. No matter what kind of person she was the treasure in his heart. "Yes, I'll get the administrator of the estate fund to sign a permit for you. As for Miss Song, Can you handle it yourself? As Hua Xiaoheng spoke, he sent a text message to Song Jining to see if she could make a call online. As far as he knew, Song Jining was already in the uninhabited birch forest in Tunguska, Siberia. Song Jining replied to his message instantly. What's the matter? Hua Xiaoheng breathed a sigh of relief and replied, Nianji will send you a message. Because Vladimir was listening to their conversation behind them, Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to reveal too much about his family's affairs in front of outsiders. Gu Nianji also opened the WeChat conversation with Song Jining and sent her a message. Miss Song, there's something I need to discuss with you. I hope I can get your permission. Song Jining was shocked by such a polite and official tone, and she quickly replied. Miss Song, what's wrong? Is it little Nianji? Was it hacked? Thoughts are here, Miss Song. It's like this. Luo Jialan, who used to be Hua Jialan, convinced grandfather Hua to let her marry Major General Hua instead of me. Miss Song, what did you say? What did you say? That Alzheimer's bastard who cheated on his wife and angered her to death wants Hua Jialan to marry my son. Nianji, wait, I can't take it anymore. Song Jining switched out and opened her phone's contact list. She first found Hua Guanshan's number and dialed it. She thought that Hua Xuanong dared to bring it up because that B*TCH Hua Guanshan was behind it. Hua Guanshan and Hua Xuanong were glaring at each other. How can you say that to Xiaoheng? I already said I don't agree. When Hua Guanshan heard his phone ring again, he thought it was Hua Xiaoheng calling. He looked down and realized it was Song Jining. He immediately answered the call. Before he could say anything, Song Jining's angry voice came through the phone. Hua Guanshan, if you interfere with my son's marriage again, I'll make Xiaoheng leave the Hua family too. Hua Guanshan smiled bitterly. I didn't agree. Don't worry, they won't be able to get past me. Song Jining, you didn't agree? Did the old master act on his own? What do you think? I'm not even satisfied with Nianji. Do you think I'll like Luo Jialan? Hua Guanshan lowered his voice to comfort Song Jining. Jining, don't be angry. I'll never let Luo Jialan marry Xiaoheng. Song Jining pondered for a moment before saying, Is the old man here? Let me have a word with the old man. Yes, Luo Jialan is here too. Hua Guanshan saw that Luo Jialan and Hua Xuanong's eyes were flickering. They looked like they were about to slip away, so he simply pressed the speakerphone and handed the phone to Hua Xuanong. You're talking. Is Jining. I've turned on the speakerphone so everyone can hear. Hua Xuanong saw that he couldn't avoid it, so he coughed and said, Jining, here's the thing. You, grandfather Hua, don't talk like that. We don't know each other well. Song Jining was furious. Head nurse Zhang is waiting for you in prison. Do you want to reunite with her in prison? These words poked at Hua Xuanong's sore spot. He was furious. How dare you talk to me like that? Song Jining ignored him. She knew that Hua Guanshan had turned on the speakerphone, so she turned to Luo Jialan and said, And you, Luo Jialan, we haven't settled the score from back then. Do you think I'm like grandfather Hua and have dementia? I've forgotten what you did to me. Luo Jialan was so scared that she trembled. She leaned close to Hua Xuanong and said while trembling, Grandfather, I didn't mean to. I did it for my mother. A person who didn't save her mother can still stand up for her mother? Luo Jialan, not everyone in the world is your mother. Even if you're mentally retarded, they still have to flatter and coax you. Song Jining said coldly, I won't say any more. Wait for my lawyer's letter. Song Jining hung up the phone and immediately sent a message to Gu Nianji. Miss Song, little Nianji, I have full authority to entrust you as my lawyer. You can sue Luo Jialan however you want. With their mother-in-law and daughter-in-law working together, was there anything in this world that they couldn't do? A lawsuit that couldn't be won? This was today's third update, Chapter 1247, When Mother-in-law and Daughter-in-law Work Together, I Own the World. Please give me a wave of monthly votes and recommendation votes. Good night, sweethearts. Chapter 1258. After obtaining Song Jining's authorization, Gu Nianji was finally able to vent her pent-up anger. She immediately found the lawyer's agent contract template from her cloud folder and sent it to Song Jining. Nianzi is here. Miss Song, sign the agent contract and send it to my email after scanning it. Don't worry about the rest. Wait for me to send the lawyer's letter and court subpoena. Song Jining was very confident in Gu Nianji's professional abilities. She replied immediately. Miss Song, okay, I'll sign it right away. Are you coming to Tunguska with Xiaoheng? I can give it to you in person. Gunyanji, damn, she was so excited just now that she forgot that Song Jining was in Tunguska, Siberia, Russia, and not in the Wuxia Empire's Imperial Capital's Institute of High Energy Physics. Gunyanji quickly typed a string of happy JPG icons and sent it over. In the Hua family's mansion in the Wuxia Empire's Imperial Capital's military compound, Hua Guanchen looked coldly at Hua Xuanong, who was about to faint, and said mercilessly, "If you continue to interfere in Xiaoheng's matter, I won't show mercy anymore." Hua Xuanong had just been scolded by Song Jining using head nurse Zhang, so he was furious. He slammed his walking stick on the ground and said angrily, "You won't show mercy? What do you want? I'm your biological father. You still want to have a future after dealing with your own father? I think you, the director of the political department, will also be fired." Haha. Hua Guanchen laughed. "You're my biological father, but I still have my biological mother. I've hidden so many things from the Xie family all these years from my biological father. Don't think that I don't know just because I didn't tell you before?" Hua Xuanong shivered when he heard the Xie family mentioned. He didn't dare to act like an old father in front of Hua Guanchen anymore. His eyes wandered and he stammered, Hide what? I've already told the Xie family that I've let your mother down. What else do they want? It's as simple as just saying sorry?" Hua Guanchen snorted, but Luo Jialan's eyes darted around. Hua Guanchen didn't want her to eavesdrop, so he didn't continue. He only said, "I don't know what they want, but I know that a few uncles are still alive. They have the best relationship with my mother. When my mother died, they were so angry that they all fell ill. It's not like you don't know that." Hua Xuanong, "I'll still say the same thing. You're already retired. Just stay at home and enjoy your remaining years. No one will make life difficult for you." Hua Guanchen said coldly, "But if you want to interfere and act like you're the head of a family, think about whether you deserve it first." These words were already very harsh. Hua Xuanong flew into a rage out of humiliation, and his face turned purple. Luo Jialan quickly held his arm and said worriedly, "Grandfather, are you feeling unwell? Let's go back to the room first and call the doctor for a checkup?" Hua Xuanong nodded weakly and closed his eyes. However, Hua Guanchen stopped them. "Luo Jialan, you're no longer a member of the Hua family, and you still have a lawsuit to fight with my ex-wife. It's not convenient for you to stay here. Please pack your things and leave our house immediately." She lived in his house, ate his food, spent his money, abused his wife, and even wanted to marry his son. Haha, did she think Hua Guanchen was an idiot and a sucker? Luo Jialan didn't expect Hua Guanchen, who had always doted on her, to turn his back on her. Unable to hold it in, her tears fell uncontrollably. She sobbed and said, "Uncle, aren't you afraid that my father's spirit in heaven will look down on you for treating me like this?" "Your father? Your father has nothing to do with me." Hua Guanchen had always doted on Luo Jialan because he thought she was the only child of his dead brother. He doted on her because he was doing his duty for his brother. It was also the lawsuit last year that made him realize that Luo Jialan, whom he had doted on for so many years, wasn't his brother's daughter at all. Only then did Luo Jialan realize that in order to successfully marry Hua Xiaoheng, she had taken the liberty to move her household registration out of Hua Guanyuan's and changed her name to Luo Jialan, following her mother's surname. She had thought that this would clear the obstacles to marrying Hua Xiaoheng. However, Hua Guanchen's reaction was something she hadn't expected. Looking at Hua Guanchen with a complicated expression, Luo Jialan asked him again, "Are you really going to be so heartless? I've been in this family for more than 20 years. I was born a member of the Hua family. Are you really going to kick me out?" These words made Hua Guanchen feel even more disgusted. "You said that you were born a member of the Hua family, and you've always thought of yourself as a member of the Hua family, but you came up with a rotten idea to marry your cousin. Tell me, how did you think of yourself as a member of the Hua family? Keep you waiting for the family to be in chaos? You caused the father and son to fall out with each other, and your family to be separated." Hua Guanchen rarely said such harsh words, but Luo Jialan's actions had touched his bottom line. Hua Guanchen could still swallow the grudge between Song Jining and Hua Guanyuan, but Luo Jialan had dared to plot against his son and try to put him in a disadvantageous position. He absolutely couldn't tolerate it. At Hua Guanchen's age, the weight of love was not as important as the affection between father and son. Besides, he had already lost Song Jining. Was he going to lose Hua Xiaoheng as well? Luo Jialan was embarrassed by Hua Guanchen's words. She burst into tears and said, "Aren't you making fun of me? When I say that I'm a member of the Hua family, I mean that I've always thought of myself as a member of the Hua family, but I'm not related to Xiaoheng by blood. Why can't I marry him? If my father was still alive he would definitely agree. You're bullying me for having no parents. Haha. Huo Guanchen kicked over the coffee table in the middle of the living room in frustration. If my big brother was still alive and found out that you abused Song Jining, do you believe that he would slap you to death? Luo Jialan didn't know how hot-tempered and powerful his big brother was, but Huo Guanchen knew it very well. Back then, in the military competition, his big brother, Huo Guanyuan, was the champion of the military competition at the age of 20. He carried back one banner after another for the army. Not only was he a good marksman, but he could also operate all kinds of weapons. He also knew how to fly fighter jets and tanks, and his hand-to-hand combat skills were also top-notch. Back then, during a military competition, he fought with a national martial arts champion in the ring and almost strangled him to death with a strangle. Huo Guanchen had always looked up to his big brother. Later he had his own son Huo Xiaoheng. He realized that his son's talent was not inferior to his big brother's, and was even better. He shifted all his hopes to Huo Xiaoheng, nurtured him carefully and was strict with him. He never treated him kindly like an ordinary father, and wished that he could surpass his big brother as soon as possible. In the end, his big brother died before his son could grow up. From the day his big brother died, Huo Guanchen had truly matured. He took on the heavy burden of the family, and took good care of his big brother's wife and daughter. No. My father loves me the most. He would never hit me for another woman. Deep down, Luo Jialan actually yearned for a father's love. However, when she was young, Huo Guanyuan wasn't at home all year round and had always been out on missions. Luo Jialan's impression of him was very vague, but this couldn't stop her from treating Huo Guanyuan as her biological father in her heart. Moreover, Huo Guanyuan was indeed good to her. His fund stated that half of the proceeds would be given to her mother, Luo Xinxue. After Luo Xinxue passed away, it fell into Luo Jialan's hands. After so many years, the proceeds had already become a very considerable amount of wealth. Last year, Song Jining suddenly recovered from her illness and sued Bai Jini to jail. It was also revealed that Luo Jialan wasn't Huo Guanyuan's biological daughter. At that time she had wanted to leave the Huo family with her own fund and live on her own. Gu Nianji wanted to pursue her responsibility for abusing Song Jining and take back the fund left behind by the Xia family's grandmother. That was why she was so busy. She couldn't lose the fund and she couldn't get into a lawsuit. Fortunately, the Zhang family was in trouble at that time and grandfather Huo was heartbroken. She used the opportunity to take care of him to persuade him to go to Europe with her to apologize to the Xia family and relax at the same time. After planning for nearly a year, she really didn't expect that in the end, not only would Song Jining not agree, but even Huo Guanchen, who had always treated her like his daughter, wouldn't agree. Haha, whether or not my big brother will hit you depends on what you've done. My big brother is a person who separates public and private interests. Huo Guanchen curled his lips in disdain and waved his hand to order, "Orderly! Go up and collect all of Luo Jialan's things and let her take them away. For the next 5 minutes, I don't want to see this person or anything related to this person in my house again." "Yes, sir." Of course, Huo Guanchen's orderly only listened to Huo Guanchen's orders. "Uncle Hua, are you serious?" Luo Jialan's face darkened. "I'll ask you again, are you really going to kick me out of the house for Gu Nianji and Huo Xiaoheng?" Huo Guanchen didn't answer her at all. He sat on the sofa and didn't look up from the newspaper. "I hope you don't regret what you said today." Luo Jialan threw out a harsh sentence and ran up to pack her things. Huo Xuanong wanted to stop Luo Jialan, but when he saw Huo Guanchen's expression and thought about the Xia family, he shrunk his neck and went upstairs with a sigh. 5 minutes later, 5 or 6 boxes of various sizes beside Luo Jialan were thrown outside the Huo family's house. An orderly drove over in a small pickup truck and escorted her and her boxes out of the military compound. "Miss Luo, where are you going?" The orderly was still very polite to Luo Jialan. Luo Jialan also had her own place in the imperial capital, but she didn't want to go back now. She said stiffly, "Drop me off at the hotel in front." She arrogantly asked the orderly to help her bring all the boxes to the hotel room before she said, "Go back and tell your chief that I'll go back to see grandfather if I have the chance." The orderly scoffed and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Luo Jialan was so angry at the orderly that she almost fainted. She had just left the Huo family, and these lowly soldiers were already giving her a hard time. Luo Jialan gritted her teeth as she stared at the orderly's retreating back. She snorted coldly and slammed the door shut. The scenery on the road from Moscow to Siberia was beautiful. In early summer, everything grew and flowers bloomed. Gu Nianji opened her eyes and looked out the window at the scenery. She was in a great mood. The car drove for a day and a night before arriving at Ekaterina Castle. This was a city named after Empress Ekaterina. The surroundings were filled with lush white birch forests. The sky was blue like a transparent sapphire, and the flat forest in the distance was like a natural oil painting. Gu Nianji stretched and said to Hua Xiaoheng, who had just opened his eyes, "Good morning." The driver in the front seat was snoring loudly. Vladimir, who was driving, glared at him in disdain. He was about to wake him up when he suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure flashing through the birch forest by the roadside from the corner of his eye. The KGB's many years of professionalism made Vladimir feel that something was wrong. But then he remembered that this was the KGB's car. There weren't many people in Russia who would dare to openly oppose the KGB, right? He was still considering whether to stop the car and find a place to eat breakfast or continue driving forward. Hua Xiaoheng also noticed the situation in the birch forest by the roadside. He was a little more vigilant than Vladimir. He turned his head to take a look, and his pupils suddenly contracted. He quickly said in Russian, "Speed up. Get down." Vladimir reflexively stepped on the accelerator, and then his entire body slid down from the car seat. At the same time, Hua Xiaoheng pounced over to hug Gu Nianji and lay down in the back seat together. At that moment, a few muffled gunshots came from the birch forest. The bullets were like rapidly spinning probes. They instantly broke the bulletproof glass on the left side of the Jeep and flew out of the right side window, piercing through the entire car. This was the first major chapter of the day, chapter 1248, Sweeping Out. The second chapter was at 1 in the afternoon, and the third chapter was at 8 in the evening. Moi. Chapter 1259. What's going on? What's going on? The middle-aged driver, who had been sleeping just now, woke up from his dream and raised his head abruptly. "Get down. You piece of trash. Get down." Vladimir had to hold the steering wheel as he cowered under the seat. He couldn't see the road ahead at all. Fortunately, this was a one-way lane, so he didn't have to worry about an oncoming car. The middle-aged driver immediately unbuckled his seat belt and planned to slide to the open space in front of the car to hide. However, the other party seemed to have locked onto the people in the car. As soon as he moved, a bullet suddenly pierced through the front window. It flew over Vladimir's head and hit the middle-aged driver in the back. The middle-aged driver let out a blood-curdling scream and fell forward with a thud. He was so big that the entire Jeep almost jumped when he moved. Gu Nianji heard the sound of the bullet piercing through the window and the middle-aged driver's scream. Her heart sank, and she quickly hugged Hua Xiaoheng tightly and pulled him down with all her might, afraid that he would also be hit by the bullet. If possible, she wished she could take the bullet for Hua Xiaoheng herself. For so many years, Hua Xiaoheng had been the one covering for others and taking the bullet for others. This time he was being protected by the girl he loved. His heart warmed. Although he was being hunted by an unknown force, he didn't panic at all. He lowered his head and kissed Gu Nianji's nervous little face. He smiled and said, "Do you want to see me perform a magic trick?" Gu Nianji, was Hua Xiaoheng scared out of his wits? Gu Nianji thought to herself. Just as she was about to tell him not to joke at a time like this, she heard Hua Xiaoheng say to Vladimir, "Give me the pistol." Vladimir. He still wanted to resist. "I don't have a pistol. I drove you guys to play, so why would I bring a pistol? Your partner has already been shot. If you don't want everyone to die together, you'd better give me a gun right away," Hua Xiaoheng said bluntly. Vladimir glared at the middle-aged driver next to him and reluctantly took out a gun. He threw it into Hua Xiaoheng's hand in the back seat and said stubbornly, "Don't tell me you didn't bring a gun." Hua Xiaoheng smiled. "It's in the suitcase. It needs to be assembled, so I didn't bring it with me." With that, he pressed Gu Nianji down with one hand and made her lie on the seat, unable to move. He quietly got up and casually raised his gun to aim at the bullet hole in the window. Narrowing his eyes, he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang 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 bang. He fired all 12 bullets in the pistol in one go. His marksmanship was indeed marvelous. Almost in the blink of an eye, there was no movement in the birch forest beside the road. The bullets that were still shooting out suddenly disappeared without a trace. Vladimir took advantage of this time to step on the accelerator and drive the Jeep like a racing car, rushing forward with all his might. They drove for a whole day and the car was almost out of gas. Only then did they slow down and start looking for a gas station. Hua Xiaoheng finally let go. Gu Nianji was pressed against the seat by him, and her arms were almost broken. Later, as the jeep sped along, the jolting was like a cradle and she fell asleep unknowingly. When she woke up it was dusk. The cold air poured in through the broken window and Gunyanji shivered. Looking down she saw that she was still covered by Hua Xiaoheng's coat. Looking up slightly she saw that Hua Xiaoheng was only wearing a black custom-made shirt. The crisp style made his figure look straight and sharp, tall and aloof. He was looking out of the window warily. "Are you okay?" Gunyanji asked and struggled to sit up. Vladimir was still driving in front. Gunyanji remembered that the middle-aged driver seemed to have been shot in the morning. She quickly asked, "Where's Uncle Ivan?" Ivan was the driver's name. "Look, he's still here." Vladimir pouted at the seat next to him. Gunyanji poked her head forward and saw the middle-aged driver lying motionless on the seat. There was an eye-catching hole in the back of his shirt. It was probably a bullet hole. She was dumbfounded and said anxiously, "He was shot, wasn't he? He was shot, wasn't he? Why didn't you send him to the hospital? How long has it been? He wasn't dead, was he?" Vladimir and Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. The middle-aged driver was still lying motionless. Gunyanji was about to burst into tears. She said to Vladimir, "What are you waiting for? Where's the hospital here? We'll send him in right away." Vladimir sneered and punched the middle-aged driver, who was lying next to him pretending to be dead. "That's enough, get up." The middle-aged driver let out a burst of laughter and sat up straight. He turned around proudly and said, "Serious, I'm fine." Gunyanji's eyes widened. "But you were clearly shot." The middle-aged driver pulled his clothes to both sides, revealing the bulletproof vest inside. "Look, with this baby, those bullets don't work on me." "Stop bragging," Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. The bullets used by the other party were armor-piercing bullets. If it weren't for the bulletproof glass blocking it, it wouldn't have been a problem for them to pierce through your bulletproof vest. Vladimir was still laughing, but now he stopped smiling and said gloomily, "They actually dared to attack us. I think this is another group of F***king people who are tired of living and want to die." When they didn't need to hide their identities, they would use the public license plate numbers. They all started with KGB and the Russian people knew about them. If they drove such a car, it meant that they were from the KGB. They still dared to provoke them. Did they eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? The middle-aged driver was also very angry. He shouted in a loud voice, "They hit me. I'm injured." Then he nagged at Vladimir. "I was injured on the job, right? You have to reimburse me for my medical expenses when we get back. Also, I'm going to the hospital for treatment and recuperation in the scenic area. You have to give me an allowance. If it's a job injury, my salary will not change during the recuperation period, including bonuses." Gunyanji, where was he injured? Was it his brain? Vladimir caught a glimpse of Gunyanji's dumbfounded expression from the corner of his eye. He felt very embarrassed, but he couldn't refute the middle-aged driver's words. He could only say impatiently, "We'll talk about it when we get back." After a while he asked again, "Are you okay?" She was still very worried about the middle-aged driver. Although he had a bulletproof vest, just as Hua Xiaoheng had said, the other party had used armor-piercing bullets. What if he was injured? The middle-aged driver rubbed his shoulder and grimaced. The bulletproof vest didn't penetrate, but the penetrating force was too strong. "I feel like my bones were broken." "Vladimir," Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, "it's indeed very likely that his bones were injured. Vladimir, why don't we take him here to find a hospital for a checkup?" Vladimir came back to his senses and spat at the middle-aged driver. "You're just trying to cheat me of a paid vacation." The middle-aged driver chuckled. "I'm injured anyway." The two of them teased each other and continued on their way. Before the sky turned dark, they still couldn't find a place to refuel. They walked for 2 days and 1 night and had already entered the Siberian region. The temperature at night had dropped significantly. The car window had a hole in it, so it couldn't keep out the cold at all. The air conditioner couldn't be used either. The key was that there wasn't much gas left. Before they found a gas station, the air conditioner couldn't be used even if it could be used. "Why don't we find a place and rest here for the night?" Vladimir was at his wit's end. He took out his phone and began to search for a nearby gas station. However, this place was too remote and the phone signal wasn't good. Vladimir couldn't find anything. Seeing this, Gunyanji took out her phone and searched. The Nandu satellite communication system was too powerful. Gunyanji's phone had no problem going online and making calls. She searched and found a gas station about 2 miles away. "This way. We'll be able to refuel in another 2 miles." Gunyanji showed Vladimir the route. Vladimir breathed a sigh of relief and quickly drove towards the gas station. The sky was already completely dark. A half-moon hung in the starry sky of Siberia. In the vast wilderness, the wind blew through the birch forest, causing it to whistle loudly. The brightly lit gas station in front of them was very eye-catching in the dark. The tall sign of the 7-11 convenience store was waiting for them to approach. Gunyanji shrunk her neck and mumbled, "It's so cold. I'll get you your coat when we refuel later." Hua Xiaoheng hugged her and kissed her face to warm her with his body temperature. The middle-aged driver and Vladimir were caught off guard and were stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. The two of them rubbed their noses and got out of the car, one on the left and one on the right. One went to refuel while the other stood guard. Their suitcases were piled in the back of the jeep. Hua Xiaoheng reached into the back of the jeep and took out the Burberry military uniform coat that he had bought for Gunyanji from the suitcase. He also brought the leather boots over for her to change into. Gunyanji put on the woolen-lined coat and instantly felt warm. She rubbed her hands together and smiled. It would be perfect if there was a cup of hot cocoa. Hua Xiaoheng also wanted to get out of the car and take a look around. He nodded. "Wait here, I'll go buy it." There was a convenience store at the gas station that sold some food, drinks, and tobacco. Hua Xiaoheng got out of the car and walked under the moonlight to the brightly lit convenience store. However, when he was about to reach the door, he stopped. He saw a few figures flash past in the moonlight in front of the door. He could clearly see that one of them was carrying a gun on his back. Judging from the shape, it should be a semi-automatic submachine gun. This was the second update of the day, Chapter 1249, Meeting Your Match. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Mwah. Chapter 1260. Hua Xiaoheng hesitated for a second. Without batting an eyelid, he shifted his footsteps and quickly disappeared into the shadows of the pillar in front of the convenience store. The criminals hiding in the convenience store, ready to wait for him to enter, suddenly realized that there was no one outside. One of them rubbed his eyes and looked out the door. It was still quiet, and the moonlight shone on the ground. Not far away, the jeep was refueling, and the tall man who had just walked towards them had disappeared without a trace. Hua Xiaoheng's movements were so fast that before these people could react, he had already disappeared. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. What should we do? That person is too shrewd. Did he discover us? Impossible, right? We didn't go out at all. I'll give it a try, the few people in the room whispered to each other through the walkie-talkie in the lowest possible voices. Hua Xiaoheng observed for a while. Seeing that the other party was still not moving, he planned to leave quietly. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of a sniper rifle with a silencer rang out beside his feet. Then it stirred up a cloud of dust in front of the convenience store. The other party was probing. Hua Xiaoheng hurriedly stopped and continued to hide behind the pillar. He was in a small corridor in front of the convenience store. There were several thick wavy beams at the top of the corridor. It was an open roof. The moonlight shone through the gaps between the beams, leaving mottled marks on the ground. Hua Xiaoheng tried his best not to let the other party discover his presence. But the muffled gunshots were exceptionally clear in the quiet Siberian night sky. Vladimir and the driver who were refueling heard the gunshots and immediately pulled out their guns to retaliate. A gunfight in a gas station could be dangerous. Therefore the two of them only fired a few shots. When they saw that the other party did not move, they stopped shooting. They just hid and watched the movements of the convenience store. The middle-aged driver whispered, "Is it the group of people on the road this morning?" Vladimir nodded. "I guess it's a group of people." They had been running for a whole day thinking that they had gotten rid of those people, but they were still waiting for them here. These people are quite smart. They knew that we needed to refuel, so they calculated the distance and waited for us at this gas station. He suddenly remembered that Gunyanji was still in the car, so he quickly poked his head out and knocked on the window. Gunyanji looked at him in confusion. "Come down quickly." The other party had caught up to them again. It's even more dangerous to shoot in the middle of a gas station. The middle-aged driver desperately gestured and mouthed to Gunyanji. If there was an explosion in the gas station, their jeep would definitely be engulfed in flames. Gunyanji understood and suddenly remembered Hua Xiaoheng, who had gone to the convenience store because she wanted hot cocoa. Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat, and she practically threw open the car door to get out. "Where's Hua Xiao?" The driver silently pointed in the direction of the convenience store. Gunyanji whipped her head around to look at the mottled moonlight at the entrance of the convenience store and the brightly lit interior. Where was the shadow of a person? They're hiding. Don't worry, Major General Hua is fine. The middle-aged driver comforted her carefully and pulled her behind him. The driver, who was short and broad like a bear, was able to block 3 people like Gunyanji, so of course it was safe to hide behind him. However, Gunyanji was worried about Hua Xiaoheng and said anxiously, "I'll call him back. Let's go. Is the car full of gas?" Almost there, almost there. Vladimir whispered from the side, "But even if we leave, the other party won't let us go. We ran away in the morning and ran for a day and night, but the other party kept chasing us. So do you think running away will work?" Gunyanji was speechless, but she couldn't watch Hua Xiaoheng be in danger and do nothing. Her mind was racing, and her gaze fell on the suitcase in the back of the jeep. She and Hua Xiaoheng each had one. Hua Xiaoheng had said that he had a gun, but it was in the suitcase and not on him. However, she remembered that she didn't see anything shaped like a gun in Hua Xiaoheng's suitcase. If Hua Xiaoheng wasn't lying, then he should have brought parts that could be assembled into a gun. Gunyanji gestured to the middle-aged driver to open the back door. The middle-aged driver didn't understand and looked at her in confusion. Gunyanji was about to explain, but Hua Xiaoheng had already retreated. A series of gunshots rang out in the silent night sky like frying beans. Gunyanji stuck her head out and saw Hua Xiaoheng running extremely fast. He was as fast as lightning under the moonlight, and in the blink of an eye, he was beside her and the middle-aged driver. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He opened the back of the car with one hand and took out his suitcase. With the bulletproof jeep in the way, Hua Xiaoheng opened his suitcase, took out the parts he had put in the suitcase and quickly assembled them. In less than 10 seconds, a miniature submachine gun with an infrared night vision scope was born in Hua Xiaoheng's hands. Vladimir saw it and held it in for a long time before saying, "In our country, it's illegal for foreigners to carry guns." "Stop talking. Just pretend you didn't see it." Gunyanji retorted bluntly to Vladimir. "Do you have such a gun?" Gunyanji's gaze slid over the small pistols in the hands of the 2 KGB agents. They were all semi-automatic weapons and their firepower was definitely superior to the small pistols. The middle-aged driver closed his eyes and muttered, "I didn't see it. I didn't see anything, Vladimir." Gunyanji continued, "If Hua Xiao didn't have a gun, would we have been able to defeat those bandits?" The middle-aged driver opened his eyes. "How did you know they were bandits?" "They dared to attack the KGB's car. Are they regular soldiers?" Gunyanji scoffed. Vladimir rubbed his nose and glared at the middle-aged driver. Hua Xiaoheng held the gun in one hand and held up a bullet in the other. He had picked it up at the entrance of the convenience store. He said to the 2 KGB agents, "Judging from their fighting methods, strategies, weapons and bullets, they should be members of the Russian mafia." Vladimir and the middle-aged driver's expressions changed at the same time. "Are you sure?" The Russian mafia was a special mafia that was famous on the entire blue planet. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the government's control over the country fell to its lowest point. It was at this time that the Russian mafia came into being and filled the power gap. They were different from the small-scale gangs in other countries when they first developed. They had a very high starting point from the beginning, because they started off by smuggling weapons. When the former Soviet Union collapsed, many places lost their governments overnight. It was unknown how many weapons had ended up in the hands of the commoners. From small AK-47 assault rifles, RGP-7 rocket launchers, to large T-34 tanks, MiG-15 fighter jets, to strategic weapons, Katyusha rocket launchers, and even nuclear materials and small nuclear bombs, they sold them all on the blue planet. The former Soviet Union's weapons were sophisticated, durable and especially lethal. It could be said that after the Russian mafia stepped onto the stage of modern history, the firepower of the mafia on the entire blue planet had risen to a huge level. Many mafia bosses in small countries even stepped onto the political stage and became national leaders. They relied on their powerful weapons that were comparable to the regular army of the former Soviet Union. But all of this had become history after President Putin came to power in Russia. President Putin was a world-famous strongman with an iron fist and was once the commander of the KGB. With him taking action and the backing of the most powerful KGB, the Russian mafia was torn apart overnight and no longer had the powerful ability to act as before. Russia had not long ago seized all the weapons of the Russian mafia. The various guns and ammunition that piled up into a small mountain amazed the Russians. "They dare to go against the KGB? Do you want us to encircle and annihilate them again?" Vladimir cursed in a low voice. Hua Xiaoheng didn't reply. He turned around and leaned against the body of the jeep. He raised his gun and aimed at the convenience store. With a bang, he fired and first extinguished the incandescent light at the entrance of the convenience store. Then he aimed at the wires pulled out from the roof of the convenience store. Bang! With a gunshot, the wires crackled and flashed with a few sparks, and then the entire convenience store fell into darkness. It turned out that Hua Xiaoheng had broken the wires with one shot. The driver was so shocked that his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He stammered, This is a gas station. You'll cause a big explosion. If a single spark fell into the oil depot, they would all be finished. I know what I'm doing. Hua Xiaoheng didn't even raise his head. He looked through the infrared night vision scope. A few figures gradually appeared in the cross-shaped scope. They're out. You guys get in the car and get ready to leave. Hua Xiaoheng waved his hand. He had already become the leader of the four. Even Vladimir couldn't help but obey his orders. The middle-aged driver went around the back of the car and quickly pulled the gas gun out of the Jeep's refueling hole. He put it back in its original position and hung it up. Just as they retreated to the back of the car and were about to open the door to get in, they heard a bang. The Jeep in front of them suddenly jumped, and then the entire car tilted. One of the tires had been blown out. Of course, the car with only 3 wheels left couldn't be driven away. Hua Xiaoheng made a prompt decision and took out Gu Nianji's suitcase from the car. He stuffed both suitcases into Gu Nianji's hands and said calmly, "Drag it. Use it as a shield if necessary." Gu Nianji nodded and stood behind Hua Xiaoheng with one suitcase in each hand. Hua Xiaoheng said to Vladimir and the driver in Russian, "We'll split up and meet up at 3 o'clock in the birch forest ahead. Let's see who the other party is going to deal with." If they were going to deal with the KGB, then they wouldn't be chasing after Hua Xiaoheng and the others. If they were going to deal with Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji, then Vladimir and the driver could escape and find reinforcements. This was the third update of the day, Chapter 1250, The Other Party's Target. P.S. Tomorrow is Monday. Don't forget your recommendation votes, my dear ones. Kiss, my dear ones. Chapter 1261. Of course, there was another if that Hua Xiaoheng didn't say. Looking ahead again, Hua Xiaoheng held a gun in one hand and held Gu Nianji's arm in the other. He quickly retreated north, far away from the jeep that was acting as cover. Gu Nianji dragged her suitcase with both hands and stumbled behind Hua Xiaoheng. The other party probably didn't expect the sudden darkness in front of the gas station. Seeing the 4 people disappear from their sight, these people panicked and rushed out of the convenience store. After coming out, they realized that they had been too rash. They quickly hid behind the pillar in front of the door to observe the situation in front. After their eyes adapted to the darkness, they quickly saw the situation in front of them with the help of the moonlight. The jeep was still parked in the gas station. Their sniper had blown up the tires just now, so the 4 people definitely wouldn't drive away. But now there was only the jeep parked there. Where were the 4 people? Did they disappear into thin air again? These people panicked and began to call for air support. Why aren't you guys making a move? The target has already escaped. If you don't make a move now, we'll all starve together. Soon there was a buzzing sound in the air. Small drones flew up from behind the convenience store and flew towards the gas station. These small drones were obviously used for reconnaissance, but from the looks of it, they weren't military products. They were probably civilian drones with high-definition cameras and perhaps far-infrared devices. It was hard to say how far they could see in the dark. Hua Xiaoheng had already led Gu Nianji into the birch forest north of the gas station. It was early summer and the leaves in the birch forest were thick. When the wind blew, the leaves rustled. It was impossible for the other party's drones to fly here. As soon as they arrived, they would be caught by the dense branches that shot out from the forest like a spider's web. Gu Nianji stood beside Hua Xiaoheng, panting. She whispered, "Major General Hua, why are we acting separately from Vladimir and the others?" They had fewer people compared to the enemy and they were split into 2 teams. It would be easy for the enemy to take them down one by one. Hua Xiaoheng looked ahead vigilantly. Without lowering his head, he whispered, "What do you think?" Gu Nianji, "I just went to the convenience store to buy hot cocoa for you. Before I entered the store, I saw someone lying in ambush. Maybe they didn't expect me to walk over directly, so they didn't hide well and let me discover them in advance." Gu Nianji nodded. "You mean there's an ambush inside?" "Yes." Hua Xiaoheng changed his location and continued to observe the movements at the gas station. "They have a lot of people and they're well armed. Plus they're at a gas station. We can't fight them head-on. If they forced the other party into a corner and decided to die together with them, none of them would be able to escape the fire and explosion of the gas station. Therefore, the most important thing now was to leave the gas station. But we don't have many people to begin with. If we stay with Vladimir and the others? Gunyanji didn't give up. She felt that they were all in the same boat at this time, so they should help each other and get through this together. Xiaoheng narrowed his eyes. You trust them that much? What if this has something to do with them? In addition to distracting the enemy's attention and firepower, there was another reason why he said to split up. He didn't say that he wanted to get away from the 2 KGB agents' surveillance. What if this was a thief crying thief? Xiaoheng had been in this business for so many years. What hadn't he seen? All was fair in war. It wasn't just a literal metaphor. However, Gunyanji was closer to Vladimir and the driver, so she instinctively objected. No way? This is too dangerous. Do they need to be so complicated to deal with us? It's hard to say. Maybe not, maybe not. I know you're talking about evidence, but my experience tells me that we can't trust anyone at this time. We can only trust each other. Xiaoheng and Gunyanji had different perspectives on the problem, and their starting points were also different. Also, think about it carefully. Why did those criminals only hit the tires at the gas station and not the gas tank directly? Gunyanji. Because they didn't want Vladimir and Ivan to be implicated. Blowing up the tires was to give them a chance to escape. Xiaoheng enunciated each word. Gunyanji was silent for a moment. She criticized herself for being too emotional. Although she got along well with the 2 KGB agents, they were still KGB agents. She couldn't treat tigers as pet cats just because they knew how to act cute. But deep down, Gunyanji still hoped that Vladimir and the driver weren't so dark. After all, she didn't think there was a real conflict of interest between them. Xiaoheng knew that Gunyanji was feeling bad, so he didn't bring up the topic. He raised his submachine gun and looked through the scope at the dozen or so small drones above the gas station opposite them. He turned around and put the 2 suitcases filled with a lot of clothes together, one in front of the other. He leaned against a soft haystack and said to Gunyanji, "Stay behind this suitcase and don't move. I'll go over there and see if I can shoot down these drones." Although these things weren't as powerful as the military drones, it was quite annoying to have them follow them like shadows. It was dark all around and Gunyanji was a little afraid. However, she was even more afraid that Xiaoheng would fight against 10 people alone and wouldn't be able to return. She grabbed his hand and whispered, "Can't you just shoot the drones here?" Xiaoheng could tell that she was worried, so he pulled her over and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. "Be good, I'll be fine." They couldn't shoot here, and the other party would know their location as soon as they shot. Therefore, if he wanted to shoot those drones, he definitely couldn't do it where he and Gunyanji were hiding. Gunyanji understood and her palms were sweating. "Then why don't you go somewhere else and shoot? Aren't you afraid that they'll know your location?" "It's more convenient for me to change positions alone." Xiaoheng changed the magazine to a submachine gun and whispered, "The other party is a Russian mafia. The weapons in their hands are enough to compete with the regular army. I have to go and see what weapons they have." Because they were facing a Russian mafia, anything was possible. Their weapons were most likely very powerful. The most terrifying possibility was that the other party had an RPG-7 rocket launcher. That thing could hit the birch forest, and it would be accurate and create a sea of fire. Xiaoheng didn't tell Gunyanji in detail, afraid that he would scare her. Under the moonlight, Gunyanji's little face was so pale that it glowed. He could tell that she was actually very scared, but in order not to worry him, she forced herself to be calm. Xiaoheng felt a little sad. He, who had always acted decisively, felt a moment of reluctance. But soon, his natural instinct to destroy the enemy made him leave decisively. Xiaoheng's strong figure, which was like a black panther, quickly disappeared into the dense forest of the birch forest. Gunyanji silently looked in the direction he disappeared in. She covered her pounding heart and slowly shrank behind the suitcase. She curled up into a ball and tried her best to reduce her presence. The second-in-command of the KGB, Vladimir, and the middle-aged driver took advantage of the night to quickly escape the gas station in the dark. His usually fat and sluggish body was now bursting with extraordinary mobility. It was the opposite direction of Xiaoheng and Gunyanji. Xiaoheng took Gunyanji north and entered the birch forest on the opposite side of the highway. Vladimir and the middle-aged driver went south, bypassing the gas station and the convenience store. They crossed the highway from the other side and entered the birch forest in the north. This could indeed distract the enemy's attention and firepower. However, there was a prerequisite for doing this, and that was that all 4 of them were the enemy's targets. If only 2 of them were the enemy's targets, they would be splitting their manpower and firepower by doing this. When the enemy's small drone hovered over the gas station, Vladimir and the middle-aged driver had already circled around to the woods behind the convenience store. As soon as the two of them circled around the back of the convenience store, they found 4 or 5 people operating the small drone in the backyard of the convenience store. The middle-aged driver stuck his head out to take a look and his eyes widened in surprise. He muttered, "They're quite well prepared." Vladimir's face darkened and he didn't say anything. He kicked him. "Don't make a sound. Hurry up and go." "Go where?" The middle-aged driver looked at him suspiciously. "Sirius and the others deliberately separated from us. Are you still going to meet up with them?" "Vladimir." He looked up and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be smart for once. You knew that Major General Hua deliberately left us behind." Bullsh*T. The middle-aged driver instantly revealed his true colors. "They're suspecting you? But did you bring these people here?" Vladimir was so angry at the middle-aged driver that his nose was crooked. "F***ck your great-grandmother? Which eye of yours can tell that these people are related to me?" The middle-aged driver still looked suspicious. "Not only do Sirius and the others suspect you, even I suspect you. You've always had a lot of tricks up your sleeves. Besides, how can I tell that you're related to them?" Vladimir was so angry that he went crazy. He strangled the middle-aged driver's neck. "F***ck your mother's sh**t. If these people were related to me, would I have let them attack at the gas station? If I wasn't careful, I would have killed myself. Do you have any common sense?" The middle-aged driver rolled his eyes from being strangled by him and quickly apologized. I know. I've wronged you. Can you let go?" "Umph." Vladimir let go of his hand but kicked the middle-aged driver again. "You've never used your cleverness in the right place." "I'm not smart." The middle-aged driver rubbed his throat. "I'm just a little more meticulous than others." "You're a careless person, and you still have the cheek to say that you're meticulous." Forget it if you don't believe me." The middle-aged driver looked at Vladimir. "You always secretly compare the likes on your WeChat with me. Do you think I don't know?" Vladimir, after a while, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Shut up. I'm going to contact the KGB headquarters in Moscow now. You're in charge of keeping watch." The middle-aged driver froze for a moment. "You're only contacting them now. How dare you say that this has nothing to do with you?" "I say, boss, you can't do this. Sirius is so good to us. How could you have the heart to set up a trap to lie to her? I despise you for 10,000 years." "It's none of your business." Vladimir was too lazy to explain. He just wanted to see how many tricks Hua Xiaoheng had up his sleeves. This was the first chapter of the day, chapter 1251, Despise You for 10,000 Years. The second chapter was at 1 p.m., and the third chapter was at 8 p.m. Today was Monday and I forgot to vote for my friend's recommendation form. P.S. Thank you to Only Reading Makes You Happy in Life, for your 10,000 Chidian coins the day before yesterday. Mwah. He wants our lives. But if he didn't come here to shoot the drones, but to the birch forest on the other side, Sirius would have been exposed. Those gangster gunmen are vicious and evil, so they would have scared Sirius. So I think it's okay for him to lure those gangster gunmen over. The middle-aged driver was really considerate of Gunyenji. Even if Hua Xiaoheng lured the gangster gunmen over to their side, he didn't think it was a big deal. And we're men, so of course we have to protect women. So boss, let's not run anymore. Let's fight with Major General Hua. After the middle-aged driver finished speaking, he pulled out his pistol and ran back. Come back, Ivan. I order you to come back. Vladimir was so angry that he almost stomped his feet. I'm leaving alone. Are you coming back or not? However, the middle-aged driver ran forward without looking back. He came to a place not far from Hua Xiaoheng and found a place to take cover. Then he poked his head out and fired 4 or 5 shots in a row. Instantly, 4 or 5 gangster gunmen fell to the ground. Hua Xiaoheng looked at him in surprise. He didn't expect this guy to have the guts to come back to participate in the gunfight. He turned around and hid behind the dark tree trunk. The submachine gun equipped with the far-infrared night vision scope played a greater role at this time. Da-da-da-da. The sound of gunfire echoed in the quiet forest. The bright red tongues of fire were the only light in the dark forest, attracting moths to constantly pounce over, even if they were burned to ashes by the fire. Although the gangster gunmen also had infrared night vision glasses, they were completely inferior to Hua Xiaoheng in terms of use. Hua Xiaoheng was a soldier and had been a special forces soldier before. He had also been a fighter jet test pilot. No matter which army he was in, he was undoubtedly the best. Even the 2 KGB agents weren't as good at shooting as him. Because they weren't soldiers, they hadn't systematically practiced shooting. But the 2 KGB agents' marksmanship was still very accurate. Moreover, although the bullets of their pistols were relatively old, and because of the design deviation the hit rate wasn't high. But the KGB special bullets had a very special characteristic, and that was that they had very strong penetrating power. They could even penetrate bulletproof vests when they faced each other. By the time Vladimir came back expressionlessly, the middle-aged driver had already killed 3 or 4 gangster gunmen. Didn't you leave? Why are you back? The middle-aged driver didn't think too much about it. He thought that Vladimir was here to steal the credit. You're not dead, so how can I leave? Vladimir rolled his eyes again and kicked him at the same time. Make way over there. Let me do it. Vladimir took out a very long pistol from his pocket and aimed it at the gangster gunmen who were swarming over. Watch carefully. Vladimir was expressionless. He raised his arm flat as if he was in a shooting range, and fired all the bullets at the opponent in an instant. This was today's second update, Chapter 1252, Very Okay. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, the third update. Today was Monday. My friends forgot to vote for the recommendation form. Mwah. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.